And a good Wednesday, everybody. Welcome inside the Matt Valley Kia Studios. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there watching the show live, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter on the live stream. Hello, everybody watching aboard. If you're listening on the radio, welcome aboard a Wednesday show. Sixers Nets tonight. It's really lost its luster. If you're just joining us or haven't been listening to the radio all day, you found out just a little while ago, no Kevin Durant tonight, no James Harden tonight, which means no real flair for this game tonight. We'll get into it because it's an important game, but the Nets are not really portraying the message that this is all that important. Why are they doing it? I've got a couple theories. Your guys' thoughts are welcomed. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Look, I said last night, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I didn't think Durant would play. They blew the doors off the Minnesota Timberwolves last night. I think they beat them by about 40. And I said, Durant's not going to play. Their message is this: let the Sixers think they're better than us. Let the Sixers have false hope and let them kind of, hey, if they beat us, they beat us. And if we beat them without Kevin Durant, man, what kind of psyche do they have? So the Nets are playing this passive-aggressive game where, hey, if you blow us out, okay, you go into the playoffs thinking that you've got the better of us 2 out of 3 and that you just beat us in April. We didn't have all our guys. Boom. So I think the Nets are playing this game of confidence of, hey, we've got 2 champions on our team, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They're not going to play. I think Kyrie's actually playing tonight. It's Harden that's out, Durant that's out. They're in a situation where they're playing the mind game with the Sixers. They're playing the mind game with the Sixers, and the Sixers are in this, situation now where they have got to not worry about if they win this game. They can't get into, we're better than the Nets because we beat them 2 out of 3. The number 1 seed in the East has had a rough time the last couple of years. The number 1 seed in the East has been the Milwaukee Bucks, and they haven't been able to get out into the finals. They are going down that road, the Brooklyn Nets are of, hey, you want to beat us in the regular season? Have fun with your little regular season title. That's the message. That's what they're into this for. So it really, to me, sucks, especially, ESPN has to be fuming tonight. In a season like the NBA is having, there's 30 and 40-point blowouts. The average margin of victories have been huge. The season has just not been a really good season. LeBron's been hurt for a lot of it. Durant's been out. You put this super team together, they can't get on the floor together. It's one of those things that you had a game finally that everybody could kind of say, all right, here's a marquee game. Yeah, there was a Utah-Phoenix game last week. You know how many people cared about that east of the Mississippi? Not many. How many of you knew that Utah and Phoenix were the 1 and 2 seed and actually played each other and maybe was one of the most entertaining basketball games of the season a week ago? It was a great game. But who's paying attention to that on the East Coast? Nobody. You've got Philly and Brooklyn playing tonight. That's a game nationwide everybody cares about. 2 top teams in the East going at it. The super team Nets against this Sixers team that, it's funny, the Sixers can kind of be viewed as a villain in league circles. They lost on purpose to obtain these players who are now helping them become the best team in basketball. Joel Embiid could win an MVP. Ben Simmons could be the defensive player of the year. That happened one time for the Sixers before. You know how that ended up? They went to the finals. Allen Iverson, MVP. Dikembe Mutombo, defensive player of the year. So the recipe is kind of there for the Sixers. This is a marquee game that just lost its luster. If you go to our website, 973ESPN.com, Kevin McCormick has more on the Nets sitting multiple players for the matchup tonight. What's the message from the Nets? The message from the Nets to me is we don't care. This regular season doesn't really mean all that much to us. And by the way, let's be honest. If the Sixers win this game, it doesn't guarantee them the number one seed. All it does is puts them in first place all by themselves for at least a night. But let's take a look at this if we can. The Sixers, down the stretch they come, they have identical 37-17 records. A lot of people thought the Sixers would kind of fade away. A lot of people thought the Nets would kind of pull away. The Nets haven't had their big three on the court at the same time. So they haven't been able to pull away, and the Sixers just won't go away. They got this West Coast trip. They keep their head above water. They got this 4-game road trip. They go 3-1. They're playing all these games bunched into a bunch of days. Sixers keep their head above water. They lost Joel Embiid. Sixers keep their head above water. So the Sixers haven't faded. The Nets haven't pushed away. And you have two teams with identical records. They're 3.5 games up on the Bucks. We got about 19 games to go for both teams here. Down the stretch they come. The Sixers have had a murderous schedule that they've had to navigate themselves through in the last 3 weeks. They had the West Coast trip. They came home and had the back-to-back. They went back out. They had a 6-game West Coast trip, a 2-game back-to-back, and then a 4-game road trip. But you look at the schedule on the other side, they got Brooklyn tonight. They got the Clippers on Friday. They got Golden State Monday. They got Phoenix on Wednesday. They got the 2 games with Milwaukee back-to-back. It doesn't finally lighten up for the Sixers until Monday night, April 26th, when they host Oklahoma City. They got a back-to-back with Atlanta. That's no cupcake. They're at San Antonio, not fun. At Chicago, at Houston, versus the Pelicans, versus the Pistons, at Indiana, at Miami, and then Orlando. So it does lighten up a little bit at the end of the season. But this stretch of games here is brutal, and I think Brooklyn's seeing that stretch of games for Philadelphia and say, all right, let's see how you guys navigate your way through this week. If you beat us tonight, that's fine, but you beat us without Kevin Durant and James Harden. Just keep that in mind. Now, down the stretch for Brooklyn, Charlotte, very winnable. Miami, winnable. New Orleans, winnable. Toronto, winnable. Boston, stinks. Phoenix, that's a good team. Toronto, winnable. Indiana, Portland, back-to-back Milwaukee, that's tough. So they got 3 games. Dallas, at Denver, Chicago, San Antonio, Chicago, Cleveland. Their schedules, next to the Sixers, they've got a much easier road to go. So this is a night that the Nets said, you know what? Let's not make this a Eastern Conference Finals type of feel, all right? Let's not give the Sixers, let's not acquiesce to them. You know, the Sixers are excited about this. Ben Simmons has come out. There's only one ball, and you got to play defense too. All right, pours a little fuel on the fire. The Sixers are the team that is saying they're excited about this. And the Nets are the team that's saying, you guys have fun with that. Which means what? The Sixers don't win this game tonight. It's a bad look. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Michael is watching on Facebook. He says, this really pisses me off. I like a little fire in the belly there, Michael. Says, was so looking forward to this game. What a disgrace for the NBA and the fans in attendance. Well, there's not very many fans in attendance, but you're right. Yeah, I can't believe the NBA is very happy about this. I can't imagine that the NBA is thrilled that this marquee game, they get not too many marquee games this season. They got one tonight. And this happens. It's not a good look. The NBA's had a tough year. Joe Show's watching. He's on YouTube watching the show. Says anything can happen. Sixers is that team that wins against the good teams. They lose against the bad, typical Philly team. I'm excited about it because it'll show how they play in the playoffs. Here's the problem. It's not a good barometer. You're playing a Nets team that's severely shorthanded. And by the way, LaMarcus Aldridge isn't playing in the game tonight either. Not that he's a big deal, but we've been talking for the last week or two. Who's stopping Joel Embiid? Now, Joel Embiid could go off for 45 points tonight. They're not stopping him. But the problem will be, hey, Joel Embiid went for 45. You play him in the playoffs. Yeah, we didn't have Durant. We didn't have Harden. Good luck. I don't know. How does this game have to go for you? Does it not matter anymore? Or do you have to see the Sixers impose their will and dominate this half-ass Brooklyn bunch? Because that's essentially what this is. This is a ragtag Brooklyn bunch. This team's a joke tonight that they're putting out there. They should be ashamed of themselves, and the NBA should be embarrassed. Kevin Durant had no business playing in a game the other night against the Minnesota Timberwolves when they were up by 40 in the game. And you know you're playing Philadelphia Wednesday night for first place in the East. I'm not telling you this is how to run your franchise, but the NBA has to, the Brooklyn Nets have to look at that and say, we got Philadelphia Wednesday, or we could play them tonight against Minnesota. And what did they do? They played them against Minnesota. They had no part of wanting to play Durant in this game tonight. That's what it tells me. And why didn't they want to play Durant in the game tonight? They don't want to give Philly the satisfaction. They feel that this game is more important to Philly than it is to Brooklyn. Jalen's watching on YouTube, says win by 40 and send a message. Hey, it might send a message, but then the Brooklyn Nets could say, well, Durant averages 26 a game and Harden averages blank a game, whatever it is, 25. There's 40 right there that we didn't have in our lineup. So you beat us by 40. You better beat us by 60. Tommy's watching on Facebook, says Durant, KD, and Harden injured. Irving just takes off when he wants. Yeah, I think Kyrie's back tonight, Tom. But you're right. You never know when Kyrie's going to come, go, what happens. But I'll tell you what, Michael's right. You should be highly disappointed if you're a fan that this is what happened tonight. Now, Joe Show's checking in. He says, this game doesn't matter. It's how they finished the last 19 games. They need to finish first. You're right. The Brooklyn Nets are telling you, Joe, that this game doesn't matter. And quite frankly, in the grand scheme of things, it matters for one big reason. And one reason that might not even happen. If they tie. That's it. If they tie in the standings, this is the tiebreaker. So on the remote possibility, now they are exactly tied right now. They have the same exact record. If they ended the season with the same exact record, this game matters. Other than that, doesn't matter all that much. The way I just read that schedule down for both those teams, Brooklyn's saying, we've got an easier road. You beat us tonight, that's okay. That's fine. We'll be the 2 seed. But I think the difference of the 1 and 2 seed for Philly is exponentially different than it is for Brooklyn. We talked about what the pairings were about a week ago. They're going to keep changing as they are right now. Right now, the 1 seed is Philadelphia. They have a better conference record. They have a better division record. That's why they're ahead of the Nets in the standings. It would be 1 Philadelphia versus 8 New York. Now, keep in mind, there's this wonky play-in game, too. So I'm going 1-8 as it currently sits. But you got Philly would play the Knicks. Brooklyn would play Charlotte. Milwaukee would play Miami. And Atlanta would play Boston. In the next round, if Philly's the 1 seed, they're getting Atlanta or Boston. Brooklyn's getting Milwaukee. So Brooklyn would have to they would essentially have to beat Charlotte, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia to get to the finals. In Philly's case, they would have to beat New York, either Atlanta or Boston, and then Brooklyn, a much easier road. You don't want to be 2 and you don't want to be 3 because there's 3 teams in this thing right now. It's Brooklyn, it's Philly, and it's Milwaukee. And the 2 and the 3 have to meet in the second round. So if Philadelphia gets stuck being the 2 or the 3, their road is going to have to include beating both Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Philly wants to avoid that. Brooklyn can say, we don't care. And guess what? They should say that. They've got freaking Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving on their team. They shouldn't be concerned about any potential matchup in the Eastern Conference right now. They should constantly be feeling we're the favorite. Over on the text board, 609-403-0973. Mike, it sounds more like the Nets are scared. Knew they would probably lose tonight against the Sixers, even with Durant, but needed him to beat the Timberwolves. Well, they beat the Timberwolves by 40. I don't think they needed Durant in that game. And by the way, Karl-Anthony Towns didn't play in the game. It's another reason that the Nets didn't need to use Durant in that game. They could have kept him out that game and played him in this game. They didn't have Karl-Anthony Towns in that game. Text board. I know the Nets have all the talent, but do you think the lack of continuity could blow up in their face come playoff team? Yeah, if there's anything that could blow. Look, a lot of super teams have been formed. How many of them won in their first season? Not even the LeBron, D. Wade, and Bosh trifecta won in their first season. They eventually ended up winning. They eventually ended up getting it together. But they didn't win in their first season. And I'm not surprised if this conglomerate doesn't win in their first season. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Jeff Bone and Pookie's watching, says it's going to be a fun game to watch. Y'all are going to have to field a field day out there on the hardwood. It should be a fun game to watch, but without Durant, we knew Harden wasn't going to play. So I'm not banging them for not having Harden play. He's got a hamstring problem. But Durant could have played in this game. You could have had Durant and Kyrie play in this game. Jeremy Ballard's watching on Facebook. Jeremy says, so who's going to come up big when Simmons can't hit a three-point shot in the clutch? What do you mean when Simmons can't hit a three-point shot? You're acting like he misses them all the time. He doesn't take them. That kind of question is irrelevant, to be honest with you. That's not part of the game. That's not part of their offense, I should say. Who's going to come up big? We actually touched on this yesterday. This season, Jeremy, has been about grooming a new Robin. Joel Embiid has established himself as the Batman. The Sixers have phased this Ben Simmons experiment out from being the Robin and have elevated Tobias Harris into that role. And Harris, now knowing his role, has entered that role with a newfound confidence. I think part of the problem with Harris was he didn't know what his role was. And when you don't know your role, rattles in your head. What's my role? Am I the number 2 guy? Am I the number 3 guy? Am I the number 4 guy? If you remember, when they got him, he was the number 4 guy on the team. They had Simmons, Embiid, Butler, and then Harris. This coaching staff sat him down and said, you're the number 2 guy. This is Joel's team, but you're number 2. So, Jeremy, Ben Simmons, you shouldn't be hoping that he hits the big three-point shot in the clutch. If that's what you're hoping for, whoo, baby, you're going to be disappointed. Joe Show says Sixers shouldn't say anything, just win. They go to the playoffs and haven't won a final. Well, yeah, the Sixers have come out and said a little bit. They have come out and said a little bit. Ben Simmons has come out and talked about them not scoring, not playing defense. Of all the guys that say they're not playing defense, Ben Simmons doesn't score enough for him to say that. Although I like what he said the other day. Hey, the guy that you want to vote for Defensive Player of the Year, I scored 42 on that guy, and I'm not a scorer. Jalen says Brooklyn Stars are not good in the playoffs. Harden is a historic playoff loser. KD couldn't win until he went to a great team. Irving couldn't even make the playoffs without LeBron in Cleveland. A lot of that is accurate. Harden is a historic playoff loser. He has had some Game 7 misfortunes, correct. Durant, they got to the finals. He had a couple meltdowns with Oklahoma City. I'll give you that. Kyrie, I don't trust Kyrie. That's my problem with Kyrie. I just don't know what guy I'm getting. Is he going to show up? Is he going to come to the game? Sports Bash Live. All right, I can see that it's going to be a good show today. It feels like it's a spirited field. There's a big game finally. There's the biggest game that has happened. Biggest game, actual game to talk about and discuss since a playoff game 2 years ago. I mean, last year's playoff, you guys were out on that, and then they got swept. It's the biggest Sixers game since Game 7 of the Raptors series. Agree? I guess so. I mean, and the Nets just robbed us of that, by the way. All right, Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. Hey, if you're on Facebook watching the show, do me a favor, share the show on your Facebook so that it gets out to others. More people watching, more fun, more engagement. Text board's open, 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app and enter the Sports Bash Cash code word at 55 after the hour. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and you can watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com. All right, text messages are coming in. The stream is filling up. If you're watching the show, I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. You can download the app and watch the show on your phone. You know, watching the show is easy to do. You can do it in a variety of ways. If you've got Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can watch on any of those platforms. You can also stream the show over to your television. So if you're at your house, you can have it on your phone. You can stream it over. If you're on your laptop, you can stream it over to your television. So you can watch the show in a variety of ways. I know a lot of people who have been starting to watch the show really like the live interaction through the chat and the stream, and you can see the guests. If you're listening on the radio, you can always text the show, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. We'll open up the phone lines. We can have a little two-way conversation if you like. 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. We got a lot of comments coming in on the video chat. I'll get to those, but I do want to read the text messages off first at 609-403-0973. All right, text message. Mike, everyone is sleeping on the Bucks. They're only 3 games back. They've been under the radar this season. I think the pressure of the number 1 seed hurt them because of their inexperience and youth. I think they're more dangerous now and can beat the Sixers and the Nets. I think they can beat the Sixers and the Nets. I don't think that people are sleeping on them. I think their disappointment the last 2 seasons, coupled with it's a very similar team. Now, I get they have Drew Holiday. They have not had Holiday in the past. He's a nice player. He adds to that mix big time. I think Brooklyn is right there with them. I mean, Milwaukee. Maybe people nationally are putting them under the radar. I would not. I, over the last 2 years, though, have not been a big fan of the Bucks. Mainly because Giannis Antetokounmpo doesn't concern me as a guy hitting big shots. The difference between Giannis not hitting big shots and Ben not hitting big shots, they're 2 similar players that are limited offensively. Giannis is more aggressive than Ben, no questions asked. Giannis doesn't have Joel Embiid. Ben Simmons does. I don't know how far a team goes if Giannis is the best player. I think he can win a championship as the best player on a team. He needs some better Robins around him. Does he have them this year? This is probably the best team he's had. So I think your points are valid there. All right, more text messages. Mike, I disagree with the narrative of why this game is so big is to show how good we are against the best teams. We had the Lakers game in February, the Utah game before the break, and the Milwaukee game without Joe. All those we showed up with big performances and were as big as this one in terms of what they mean. The only thing this game now has number 1 seed implications, which is pretty big, and let's thank the Nets for giving us an easier road to that. I didn't say that the narrative of why this game is so big is to show how you are against the best teams. I didn't say that at all. I think the Sixers have proven they can beat good teams. My point is this game is big because of the potential of being the number 1 seed. So I'm not really sure where you're saying that the narrative of this game is so big to show why you're good against the best team. Look, the Sixers the last couple of years, they beat Golden State. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Clippers. They beat almost every big team there was. Their problem was they would slip their toe. They'd stub their toe against the weaker teams. And then that suppressed them in the standings too much to where they would get bad playoff matchups. All right, Mike, the James Harden has no playoff success is not accurate. I didn't say it was accurate. I said that he came up small in some big game 7s. Is what I said. I didn't say he has no playoff success. I said he's actually had playoff success. It's been in the game 7 environments that he has come up a little small. So, yeah, he's had playoff success. He's gotten out of the first round. He's gotten to the second round. He's gotten to the Western Conference Finals. But in those games, the biggest of big games is where he has come up small. He's had playoff success. Yeah, everybody beats up on Memphis. I mean, you can get out of the first round playing Denver, Utah, but game 7 against the big teams, James Harden has, let's not sugarcoat this, not really shown up too much. So, yeah, I'm not saying that Harden has had no playoff success. I didn't say that at all. He's had some failures in the biggest games. That's it. To me, Harden is on a great spot right now, as he doesn't have to be the big guy in that game. They have Kevin Durant. So before, Harden in game 7 had to be relied on. I don't think that's the best role for him. Doesn't make him a bad player. He's a tremendous player. I just don't think that he can be the best player on the team that wins a championship. If they win a championship this year, it's because they got Kevin Durant. You know that, and I know that. You might not want to admit it, but in the end, if they win the championship, Kevin Durant will be the MVP of the finals. And Harden, they'll go down and say, this was the perfect role for him, being the number 2 guy. This is what he should have been all along. He was the number 1 guy in Houston. Not good enough. You had James Harden and Chris Paul, and Paul got hurt in that game 7 2 years ago. Who knows what would have happened there? But Harden, team was overmatched. Harden's had his chances before. Small game 7s. It's okay. He's had playoff success, just not in the biggest moments. That's all I said. In fact, I didn't even say about playoff success. I disagreed with the guy who said that he's had small playoffs. He's actually played well in the playoffs. It's just the biggest games that he has struggled with. All right, let me get some more of your comments up on the screen here. 609-403-0973. Mike, do you think the Sixers are strong enough to make the finals, or are they still missing a key player? Well, I think they're missing a key player until they get George Hill back. I want to see how Hill fits in, what kind of role he has, what he's still got left. He's 34 years old, hasn't played in a while. I think the last time he played was in February, early February. He could be that key missing player. We talked to Hudrick yesterday about it. In the playoffs, you're probably going to see the starting 5, George Hill, Shake Milton, and Dwight Howard. That will be your 8. One other guy might get a handful of minutes. That would be it for me. Maybe it's Mike Scott. Furkan Korkmaz might get a run if they need some offense and some shooting. But, yeah, I think the Sixers are strong enough to make the finals. But that player, George Hill, they need that guy. They need George Hill to be what they traded for. A veteran ball handler, knock down shots, most important, defender. Defender. All right, 609-403-0973. Boy, the show is moving fast today. My Lord. It's brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online, eastcoastroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, which you can download and personalize your app alerts now. Yep, if you just want Sixers, if you want Sixers, Phillies, Eagles, and Flyers, you can ask for that. You can ask for just high school sports. You can get it all with the new 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and you can watch the show live through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, the live video stream chat is really filling up. We have so many comments over there. I promise I'm going to get to those comments next because I love the two-way conversation we're having on this game. People want this game tonight. Sixers, Nets, and you can only hear it on one place. That's it. 97.3 ESPN. So if you're in your car tonight, you don't have to change the channel. Josh has you right after me. He's got a good show tonight. Dave Weinberg, Kevin McCormick leads you into the Sixers game. And then I'm back tomorrow to react to it right here on the Sports Bash. All right, don't go away. More Sports Bash next. 97.3 ESPN. $2:41 Sports Bash Wednesday. Jason Fitz joins me at 3 o'clock. Paul Hudrick at 3:20. Mosher's in the house. Kevin Pelton will answer the keys about this Sixers-Nets game. It lost a little bit of its luster. Text messages flowing. People watching the live video, appreciate you. A lot of chat going on. Follow me at Mike Gill Show. Don't forget to read all our Sixers coverage at 97.3ESPN.com. All right, let's see what we got. What's going on over here? By the way, give me a call, 609-573-3776. Text 609-403-0973. Let's see what we got going on over in the chat on the video stream today. John is watching on YouTube. Do you see Korkmaz scoring 20 points again tonight? Do I see it? No. Can it happen? Sure. I mean, I think the Nets are playing a half-assed product tonight. So Korkmaz has been playing well. If he's still shooting well, there's no reason why he couldn't get it. I mean, obviously, it's not his average. He's been shooting very well. Anytime a shooter has a hot night, yeah, I could see them doing it. Do I predict it? No. I wouldn't do that if you're trying to bet on some sort of, DraftKings site, something to that effect. Jeremy, obviously Simmons or anyone else is going to get past the first round because they don't have reliable stars. Maybe don't win your games in the playoffs, Mike. I don't know what that means. Jeremy, you have to be more clear than that. I don't know what you're talking about there. James Beeman, cousin of Willie Beeman. Steeman Willie Beeman. Sixers are the only team who match up defensively versus Brooklyn. Hashtag facts, Beeman. We have plenty of guards to defend Harden and Kyrie or Harris and KD. We're ready. Sixers up. James, great points. Sixers can match the Celtic Brooklyn defensively. That's the one team that you could say, all right, Ben Simmons, he can try to defend Durant. I'm not saying he's going to shut him out. I mean, if Durant gets 20 instead of 28, George Hill, he's a good defender. Thibel's a good defender. Harris has turned into a decent defender this year. And then, of course, you got Embiid on the back end. The Nets are going to have to hit a lot of get a lot of jumpers, and I don't know how open they're going to get. Danuch, watching on Facebook. The Nets are clearly the best team in the East. They're not even trying, and they won't until the playoffs. TBD if they have the ability to flip the switch. Valid. I will say this, Danuch. The Heat put up a super team, and it took them a year before they finally won that title. I think you're right about the Nets and everything you said. You would have been right about the Heat, too, and they didn't win that title that first year. I think they might need a year to click this thing all together. And their depth stinks. You know it, and I know it. Brooklyn has Zippo depth. I mean, Blake Griffin's a shell of himself. LaMarcus Aldridge, ditto. Jalen. Harden from last playoffs, 2 of 11, a misleading 21 points on the night. Most coming at the free throw line, as the Beard braved nothing in the fourth quarter in which he did not take a single shot. Harden was very disappointing in his last game 7. No question. Apparently it's Danucci's birthday today. Proud of you. Today, April 14th. I'll put it in my phone. Give me an alert next year so I'm not late on that party. What else we got? 609-403-0973. Mike, you said this game was the biggest since game 7 of the Raptors series. I'm saying those other games were just as big as tonight for that reason. Well, I disagree for a couple of reasons. One, the Lakers is a Western Conference game. Utah's a Western Conference game. Those games don't mean as much as these games out east, but I get what you're saying in terms of the level of team they are. Big difference. Where we are on the schedule matters. Playing the Lakers in February and beating Utah before the All-Star break isn't as impactful as this game tonight. Like beating Milwaukee on Christmas is great, but that gets you swept in the first round of the playoffs against Boston. This game matters more than those games. No question. Mike, I know Dwight Howard gets rebounds. I'd trade him to get Tony Bradley back in a second if we could. I don't know about that. He cancels out half of his rebounds with shorthanded turnovers and the dumbest fouls in text. Drives me crazy. Backup center is the scariest thing about this team. It's funny you say that because I think it's the biggest difference between this Sixers team and the previous incarnations of them. They finally have a backup center. You would take Joel Embiid out and the whole thing would fall apart. That's not happening with Dwight Howard now. Teams aren't just coming right down the lane. You might not like Howard. He rebounds. He is a presence in the middle. I don't agree with what you're saying, that he cancels stuff out. Yeah, on some nights he makes bonehead decisions, dumb fouls, texts. Yes. But for the most part, he gives you a legitimate backup force in there that you did not have. Tony Bradley was an offensive-minded backup center. He was not nearly as impactful defensively as Dwight Howard was or is. The backup center has to have a presence. He has to play defense. The other teams can't say, hey, Embiid's out of the game. We just want to come right down the lane. That's what's happened in the last 3 playoff series. When Embiid left the game, whoop, come on down. You get a bucket, and you get a bucket, and you get a bucket. James is watching on Facebook. How can the Nets flip the switch when we don't even know what they look like as a full team? Remains to be seen, James. I don't know that the Nets can flip the switch. I imagine they can. They got 3 Hall of Fame players. They got 2 NBA champions. I guess that all 3 of them on the court together. I'm going off of the team that last was a quote-unquote super team that lost. That was that Miami Heat team that lost in the finals. You had 3 guys that came together, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. They lost their first year against Dallas. They won the second year. It took them a year to and they got off to a slow start. I think they were 10-10 out of the gates, and then they really stepped on the pedal, but they didn't really, Now, Durant, Steph, and the Warriors, that group, Clay, they won their first year. LeBron, when he went back to Cleveland, they didn't win the first year. It took him a year. You had the Garnett, Allen, and Pierce. They won in their first go-around, but I think they also played most of that season. I don't think they played 8 games together, if memory serves. So a lot of these pairings, it took them a year to do it. It took them a year before they kind of kicked it into another gear. 609-403-0973. Over to the text board. Mike, the biggest battle the Sixers is against themselves. So far, Joel and Ben haven't shown they can stay healthy. That's a fair comment. I mean, if they can stay healthy, Ben has been healthy for the most part. Last year he had that back injury, but he broke his foot in the first year, but that was the Sixers being the Sixers. He could have played that year. They chose not to play him. My opinion. I don't know that to be accurate, but it's my opinion. I think Ben was ready to play at some point of that season. Yeah, if the Sixers stay healthy, they're a handful. Nobody out there can defend Joel Embiid. Nobody. Nobody in the East can defend Joel Embiid. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Jeremy's in Hamilton on 97.3. What's up, Jeremy?
Mike, what's going on, man? Long-time big fan.
Not much. How are you?
I love all the new setups you guys have. It's real cool, man. I'm actually watching from Facebook when my phone live with you guys. And I have, what do you call it, background to get back to what I was trying to type on there on the Facebook thing. My thing with Ben Simmons is, I know he doesn't shoot threes, but when he steps down, in other words, when he's not doing his high games and playing well defense and all that, these guys like Tobias and Green have to step up. You notice this year they had their starts of games where they kind of fit in there and did well for them. We need that go-to guy in the playoffs that we can, not worry about when Embiid shoots threes and not down the box. We need that. We need like efficiency. We need that. Like,
no, I see what you're saying, but all season long though, Ben Simmons hasn't been that guy, and they're the number one seed. Their formula has changed. If you want to hold on to Ben Simmons has to be a scorer, you're going to be disappointed. The Sixers have said, Ben, don't worry about scoring. We're going to ask these other guys to pick up that for you. What we want you to do is play your heart out on defense and pass and set these guys up to get the best looks they can get. And that's essentially what he's become.
I meant that humorously, like in a funny way, because we know Ben's got his game, and that's what he plays. And I'm fine with that. Go give me 22, whatever, a game, and I'm good with that. What I'm not good with is these guys in the locker room aren't seeing that and saying, you know what, let me step up, like Butler did when he was here for us.
Yeah.
I wish he was here. I really do. Once we got that go-to guy, and other teams are seeing.
Well, Jeremy, you don't think Joel Embiid could be that? You don't think Joel Embiid's playing at a level right now where he could be that guy?
I think he could if he stays healthy.
Yeah,
but I honestly think, my own opinion, he needs to get down there in that box. He is unstoppable down there in the box. Yeah, he can shoot threes. He's got his 10-foot jumper here and there. He bangs the boards and all that, but get the guy down the box where he belongs.
Jeremy, he scored. And by the way, appreciate the call, Jeremy. Appreciate you watching the show too on Facebook there. Look, he scored 14 different ways the other night. He scored on a fadeaway. He was Dirk Nowitzki. He was Hakeem Olajuwon. He scored from the elbow. He scored in the paint. He scored hit a three. You know what Joel Embiid is shooting from three-point range this year, by the way? I can understand if you were saying Joel's shooting too many threes and he's only hitting 29%. Joel Embiid from three-point range this year, which, by the way, I think his three-point attempts are down from where they've been in the past. He's shooting 38% from three. That's a high percentage shot, 38%. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the game right now. This isn't the Joel Embiid of getting his butt down in the box. He's shooting too many. He was shooting too many because he wasn't making them in the past. Joel Embiid, the last 3 seasons, has not been a good three-point shooter. Last year, he shot 33%. The year before that, 30. The year before that, 30. He was shooting too many of them, 4 per game. This year, he's down to 3, and he's making 38% of them. 38%, I don't have a problem with Joel Embiid. Look, the offensive game that Joel Embiid is bringing to the table right now, I don't think any of us should have a problem with. You'd have to have your head examined to tell this guy to change what he's doing right now. By the way, the Phillies have just made a roster move. Mickey Moniak has been called up from Lehigh Valley. Adam Hastley has left the team for personal reasons for an undetermined amount of time. he is going on the restricted list. The interesting thing about this is that Moniak gets the call as the first outfielder that has come up. So Moniak is up. Hasely, and I'm not sure that this was forced upon the Phillies. I don't think they said, hey, we need to do something in center field. I think Hasely apparently approached them, and he has asked to be given some time off. But the interesting part about this is that Moniak is the guy that gets the call. Interesting. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. Coming up, I've got another Sports Bash Cash $1,000 code word. Stick right there. Here comes the code word now.
It's your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000. Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
Fold. F-O-L-D. Fold. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word at 3:55.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day, every weekday at 55 after each hour, from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000.
If you're struggling with alcohol or drugs, Recovery Centers of America can help. RCA's local inpatient and outpatient programs are founded on science and delivered with heart from an expert, caring team who will inspire and guide you every step of the way. Call 1-888-RECOVERY now to speak with a treatment advisor. At RCA, you'll be in a community that builds connections and fosters support from peers and RCA's team of medical professionals and recovery support specialists. At RCA's state-of-the-art campuses in Devon, PA, and Mays Landing, New Jersey, they tailor your treatment to you and also offer specialized programs for patients with history of trauma, for patients who have achieved recovery but are experiencing a relapse, for young adults, adults 50 years and older, a confidential program for first responders and military, and a faith-based program. RCA answers the phone and accepts patients 24/7. And because it's local and in-network with insurance providers, treatment is affordable and accessible. Don't wait. Call 1-888-RECOVERY today.
right, hour 2 of the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Watch the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Hit me up on the phones, 609-573-3776. Text 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live, the live chat is going on. I like this one. This guy sounds like it's still 2019, calling in and complaining about Joel Embiid. Matt's watching on Periscope on Twitter. If you're complaining about Joel Embiid about anything, I got news for you. You're on that boat by yourself, pal. And that thing's got a hole, and it's sinking, and Jaws is coming after you, and you need a bigger boat. Because I ain't complaining about Joel Embiid, nothing. I'm not telling him to change anything right now. He's playing at a level we haven't seen before. James, Sixers have been sitting in first 90% of the season and are the second best defensive team in the NBA with an MVP caliber player. Still no respect. When you have an MVP caliber player, you're in the conversation. I told you, there's 5 teams that can win the title. 5. That's it. There's 5. It's the Sixers, it's the Nets, it's the Bucks, it's the Lakers, it's the Clippers. They're the 5 teams that have a player that could be the best player on the best team, period. That doesn't mean they will win it. There's 5 teams that can win it because they have the best player. They have 5 guys. There's 5 guys that are the best players that could be the best player on a team that wins a title. The Sixers now have one of them. Now, is the rest of the team good enough? We're about to find out. I mean, I can sit here and tell you, sure, I think they can. But are they the favorite? No. You have Joel Embiid. You have a shot. Are they the best? Probably not. Do you have a shot? Joel Embiid? Yes. 609-573-3776. Tommy in Summers Point. What's going on, Tommy?
Michael, you know what this call is about. Listen, what I'm going to tell you is...
You know, Donovan McNabb retweeted me today. I wanted to tell you.
Oh, yeah?
How about that?
What did he tell you?
No, he retweeted me.
That's nice.
He retweeted me.
Oh. Hey, listen, I did work in his house years ago. Nice guy. But here's my point. No, I did. But here's my point.
I'm not questioning that. I don't doubt that.
No. Okay, but I'm saying he didn't even sign a contract with the Eagles yet. It was a sample of whom he was playing. It was an experience. But Mike, my issue with Joel Embiid, he wants to be the man. Okay, he's playing at a high level. However, when he played, he wanted no parts of Zaire Williams. He got schooled. And when you're in the playoffs, you're going to be playing Zaire Williams. I'm gonna hold off and listen. I was high on him, but I'm a little concerned because it looked like Doc even took him out of the game because he wanted no parts of that kid, and that kid took him to the basket.
Well, lucky for everyone, Zion's team's not good enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, but Mike, when you're in the playoffs, so you're going to be the number 1 seed, hopefully. But when you're in the playoffs, you're playing the best of the best, Mike. There's no teams that are taking the nights off. It's like when you go 10-6 in a regular season and you beat the worst of the worst. When you're in the playoffs, you're playing the best offensive coordinator. You're playing the best defensive coordinator. You're playing the best quarterbacks, the best defensive backs. You're playing the best of the best, and sometimes you're just not good enough. Now all right.
Well, let me ask you, Tom. Let me ask you.
I'm a little concerned.
Let me ask you. Give me a guy in the Eastern Conference that you think can slow down and stop Joel Embiid, because I haven't found one yet.
No, but Mike, when you're in the playoffs, you're playing the best of the best, and that's when you game plan for.
Well, hold on a second. You're playing the best of the best. Let's be honest. Charlotte, Atlanta, New York, they're not the best of the best. I mean, there's 3 teams.
They're not. They're dogs. But Mike, but to get to the finals, you're gonna have to step up.
I get it. All right, Brooklyn. Who on Brooklyn is defending Joel Embiid?
Mike, they're an all-around team. They run, they play defense, they can shoot. They're an all-around basketball team.
They don't play any defense.
The Sixers aren't an all-around. Mike, okay? We'll see. Listen, I'm a wait and see. Joel wants to be the best. I want my big man under that basket when there's 2 minutes left in the game in the paint, defending and scoring, where he chooses not to a lot of the times. Am I wrong?
Well, this year you're wrong. You haven't watched him enough then this year, because that's all he's doing. He's done everything. The guy's averaging 30 points a game. He's at the line 20 times a night.
Mike against dogs, okay? Where he wanted no parts of Zaire. And listen, that kid can play, but don't you think you want to see what he can do against that kid? Because he wanted no parts of him. It looked like
well, Tom, if you didn't notice,
like
they play. By the way, Tom, Joel Embiid is a 7'2" center. Zion Williamson is 6'6" playing point guard. He was playing point guard. So those two guys aren't even really matching up all that much.
Are you kidding me? Did you see Williams taking the ball to the rim? He was just running in the paint like at will, scoring at will, Mike.
Yeah, no, that night, yes, absolutely. But he's not man-to-man guarding him. He's not like he's getting backed up into the, the paint.
Correct. But correct. But don't you want your center under there making sure these guards aren't just – he scored on will. And nobody could stop him.
Tom, there's one Zion Williamson in the entire NBA. There's one Zion Williamson on the planet. So if you can,
like Joel Embiid was
if you can find another one of those guys, then yes, you should be concerned. But guess what? New Orleans is in the West Conference, and they're not making the playoffs. So you don't have to be concerned about that.
Yes, you're right. Listen, wait and see, Mike. I wish them the best. I just don't think they're ready yet.
Maybe not. And Tom, maybe you're right. I'm not going to say you're wrong or right. This all needs to play out come playoff time. There is no definitive answer here. Now, Joel Embiid, to question him, I mean, he went to the line 15 times the other night. He went to the line 20 times the other night, 17 the night before that. I mean, you can't ask much more than that. He's making free throws at a 90% clip for the most part. You want him to do it against better teams. Let's see how he's matched up, against Phoenix, who's the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. He blitzed them for 35. All right. The last time they played Brooklyn, he scored 33. The night they played Utah, who's the number 1 seed in the West, they're the number 1 seed in the NBA. So you're telling me against the good teams that he's doing it against the dogs. They played Utah, and Embiid had 40 and 19 rebounds. So, no, I have to question what you're watching. The number 1 seed in the West, he scored 40 on. The number 2 seed in the West, he scored 35 on. The number 2 seed in the East, Brooklyn, he scored 33 on. He scored 45 against Miami. He scored 38 against Boston and 42 against Boston. He had 28 against the Lakers. I don't know what else I can tell you. All right, so he had a rough night against Zion. The whole team stunk that night, but yeah, you're right. He had a bad night against Zion. I feel like you watched one game all year and have established an opinion based on the one game you happened to see on Friday night against the New Orleans Pelicans. Because every other game, he has dominated. Nobody has had an answer this season for this version of Joel Embiid. Nobody. Period. Point blank. 609-403-0973. If Joel Embiid didn't get hurt, he'd be the MVP of the league. If Joel Embiid did not miss all those games, he'd be the MVP. He's averaging 29 points a game, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. It's comical to question this gentleman right now. You could say they might not be good enough everywhere else. Fine. But don't tell me that it's Joel Embiid is the reason they're not good enough. 609-403-0973. My man Marcus. What's going on, Marcus?
What's happening, man, on the hump day? What's going on?
All is well. Can't complain.
I like it. I tried to get in there yesterday. Got a little busy at work, so it didn't happen. How about the Mets, too, man? But I'm going to leave you alone. I'm going to leave you alone about them. I think you guys
very early.
Listen, we only get, 21 times, 19 times to talk a little crap throughout the season when we actually play.
Well, that game yesterday, the umpire blew the call on Sunday night to help the Phillies, and he blew the call yesterday to hurt the Phillies. So the The instant replay is not working.
It's not at all. I listened to, I don't know if it was Tim Kirchin or I think it was Buster in the morning. That was like, these guys up in Chelsea are not helping their colleagues when it comes time for these calls. All they got to do is just get the call right. I think any instant replay in any sport is the goal, to get it right. And they're not getting it right. Some of these just outrageous calls, but it was more about basketball. Yesterday, when I heard you talking about the teams that were out there, I think you might have left out the team with the best record, I believe. You know what I mean? I didn't hear their name out there. Donovan Mitchell might be texting your inbox, not getting no respect. Because they're legit, man. The Jazz are definitely legit. And I heard the three teams you put in the East. I heard you put the Clippers and the Lakers out there when the Lakers are healthy, of course. But, they're going to have something to say out in Utah.
Hey, look, all I'm saying is this. I agree with you. I like Utah. I think they're a very fun and good team. But they have to prove that they are ready to take that next step. I don't know that Donovan Mitchell is ready to be the best player on the best team in the league. He feels to me, and I could be wrong, but so far he feels to me like he's that next level down, which is okay, but I feel like that's where he is right now.
If I squeeze these 2 points, man, two different situations. The first one was about maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. You said something about Steph Curry. Next thing you know, Steph Curry's got 6-7 straight games with 30-plus points. The last game, you think
he was watching the show on YouTube?
Yeah, he might have heard you, man. So if Donovan Mitchell is listening, he might drop a 50 burger or something in the next couple of games just so he can prove Mike wrong. But the other part to it is that, with the game being what it is now, the players not playing for the Nets, of course, is it, statement game for the Sixers, but now do you look more at that back-to-back with Milwaukee and how they've played you tough sometimes during the regular and even in the postseason? Because this Nets team is just, I think they've done it to the whole league. They've kind of treated this season with all three of their stars like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? With the Kyrie, I'm leaving for personal reasons. I know KD was hurt. James, he did get his weight down, but then next thing you know, now he's out. Like they're not caring as much as they say. As long they know they're going to be in maybe 2-3 seed, whatever, but they feel like they can just come to the playground kind of thing, put their three, grab some older dudes who used to be all-stars, and just run through the East is what I feel like. I almost feel like it's disrespectful.
Oh, I agree. I feel like
sit down and all that.
I feel the same way. I feel like they're just saying, you guys have fun with your regular season trophy, and we'll see you in the playoffs. Like I totally agree with that.
So I guess the part of the question is that, so you go out here, you handle your business. I don't care whether you win by 10 or 20, you beat them. It doesn't mean as much. But then, I know people say you don't want to look forward to it or look down the schedule, but you got Milwaukee in a back-to-back coming up, I think, the 24th and something?
Yeah,
like
you play them next
one,
the 22nd and the 24th, you play Milwaukee back-to-back.
Right. So is that the one that you can see? You don't ever want to look past anybody. I think, the guys that they got, Blake Griffin's playing better. You said LaMarcus Aldridge isn't playing. Green has been playing well for them. I mean, they still got players on the Nets, but the fact is that all the luster is out of the game.
Well, here's the thing. It depends on what happens. Like the Sixers play Brooklyn tonight, then they play the Clippers, then they play Golden State, then they play Phoenix, and then the next day they play Milwaukee. Where are they in the standings and what has occurred? Because as things evolve, that game might become the next big game. Milwaukee might be on your heels. Right now, they're 3.5 behind you. But by that point, maybe they gain a game or two, and that game becomes more important.
I hear you, man. What was the game that they played where oh, my goodness. Not the Pelican game, because I know we were definitely embarrassed with that one. They're not as good as what they should be. I mean, they're actually better than I think even what you're letting them on. They just let up a lot of leads in games. I think
they're young. They don't play a lot of defense.
Exactly. But there was another team, whether it was Cleveland or somebody else came in here with a lot of stars. I think it was back in Portland when they came in and they had, no Lillard, no McCollum, and then they just, scrape you or something like that. Like, those are the types of games that I'm hoping that doesn't happen tonight, where you have the luster, now you have the stars out, and the Sixers kind of play down to their second-hand players that are on the bench.
And I know, Marcus, and I got to roll, man. I appreciate the call, as always. Good to hear from everybody. I like the two-way conversation. Let's keep it going throughout the show. Here's the thing, especially when it comes to a game like this. Sixers, let's get into it. This should be fun. It's a big night. But the point that you make is That's what happened, and people would, oh, this is Brett Brown's fault. It's not Brett Brown's fault. The team loses bad games. It happens. You lose bad games. They lost to those Cleveland teams a couple times this year. They lost twice to Cleveland this year. This team should not be losing to Cleveland, but it happens. They've had good wins. Look, when Brett Brown was the coach, they beat Golden State on the road, and then they lost bad games. Same thing is going on with this team. It's a fun game tonight, though. We should have fun with this. Tomorrow should be a fun day. Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It's 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the app. Watch the show live. And don't forget, I got a Sports Bash cash code word coming up at 3:55. Coming up next, inside the Sixers, Paul Hudrick. What's he see from this game tonight? Has it lost its luster, or is it still there? Next. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Watch the show live, 97.3ESPN.com. I'm Mike Gill. Don't forget, I got another Sports Bash Cash code word for you coming up. Big game tonight, we thought. Lost its luster just a bit. How much so? Does it still hold the same value? Paul Hudrick, 97.3ESPN.com. Of course, we're getting you ready for the Sixers and the Nets. If you read Kevin McCormick's piece over at 97.3ESPN.com, you saw, Paul, there will be no Kevin Durant tonight, which I guess isn't all that big of a surprise. He played last night, did not play in the second half. Why play him last night? You're playing a Minnesota team, no Karl Anthony Towns. What's the message of, you know what, we'll play him against Minnesota. We don't need him against Philadelphia.
It's just a sign to me that Brooklyn really does not care about a 1 seed. Kind of one of those things. I think if they get it, great, but they are certainly not actively trying to obtain it for whatever reason. I don't know if they're, if it's just, I mean, listen, I think it's like in years past, we've seen other teams kind of do this, like these super teams where they're just way more concerned about getting through the regular season as opposed to having a good regular season. Because it does happen where sometimes you see teams that can, they use so much effort to get that 1 seed, but the time to get to the playoffs, they don't have that much left. I don't think the Sixers will be in that category if it happens, because the back end, the last 12 games or so, as I mentioned the other day, are so soft that they should, be able to go in on a pretty good note and get some guys rested up. But yeah, to me, it just signifies that the Nets are prioritizing, let's make sure that our 3 big guys are all healthy, and we'll figure out the rest, I guess, when we get to the playoffs, which is a little dangerous, but hey, they have enough talent, they might be able to just pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, to me, same. They look at it like, hey, let the Sixers have their fun, let them beat us, let them kind of get some overconfidence. The number 1 seed has not done well in the East. The Bucks have been knocked out the last couple of years, so the Nets are kind of looking at it. But would you agree that the 2 seed has a much more difficult? I mean, if you're 2, you're essentially going to have to beat Brooklyn or Milwaukee. They're going to have to play. Whoever the 2 is going to have to play the other 3rd team. So it's almost like Brooklyn saying, don't care.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, like I said, they're really banking on the fact that their talent is just so good that they can overcome it. That they, because that's the big thing with me, Mike, is that when I look at Brooklyn, you have 3 guys who are, like, you cannot question how unbelievably talented they are offensively. It's legitimately 3 of the top 10 offensive players in the entire NBA on one team, but they're all more ball dominant players. Granted, James Harden is an excellent passer, excellent distributor, but still a ball dominant player. And you have a first year coach in Steve Nash. So it's like you're really, really banking on those 3 guys just being so incredibly talented that it doesn't matter, which could work. But, with the Sixers, I think the one advantage they could have is that they have been playing together, that they've really become a team. They have much better chemistry than when the year started. And to your point, Mike, yeah, you're going to have to play everybody. Like that's the reality. If you want to get to the finals, you got to go through everybody. But that second round matchup, yes, you'd much rather play Miami or, if the Knicks make it out, like you'd much rather play one of those teams than have to go up against Brooklyn or Milwaukee in the second round. So yeah, to your point, Mike, I do think the Brooklyn Nets, it is kind of saying like, yeah, we don't care. We'll take on the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round and we'll beat them.
Yeah, which is interesting that they're even going to play Kyrie tonight. I mean, he hasn't played, and he was taking the week off. Hey, why don't you play? The rest of us will sit out. I mean, I find that to be interesting in itself. But, lost a little bit of – by the way, LaMarcus Aldridge also not playing tonight. Not
Blake Griffin. Also out.
Is also out tonight. So Aldridge, Griffin, Harden, Durant all out tonight for Brooklyn. I can't imagine the NBA's thrilled.
No, or ESPN for that matter, for this national. And look, I think we're all a little disappointed, right? We were all kind of circling this game and look at it and being like, I think since they made the Harden trade, I've been talking about how I can't wait to see the matchup where all 3 of those guys are out there against the Sixers of full strength, and we're not going to see it in the regular season. Right. That's just the way it is. So it's incredibly disappointing that we're not going to get to see that matchup ahead of the postseason.
Now, the Nets are. It's almost like the Sixers were excited for this game. Ben's come out and said only 1 ball. They don't defend. Joel made it a point to say how important this game was. Now, Doc tried to say, I don't even know who's on the schedule next. Okay. But it's almost like the Nets are like, you guys have your fun with this regular season game, but do you think the Sixers, are looking at this and now like kind of deflated? Like, we were looking forward to this and now,
See, I don't think so, Mike. I think to what you just spoke about is that they understand, because the other thing, like, there's still something at stake here too. The season series. If the Sixers win tonight, they get the season series over Brooklyn, and if it winds up being a tie after 72 games, the Sixers would get the number 1 seed. So this game does matter. It's not like it doesn't matter. I mean, let's just say that both teams decide for the rest of the season, we're going to coast into the postseason. This game still matters for that number 1 seed. So I think if you're the Sixers, you still have the same mindset. Like, sure, like, they're human beings, so I'm sure there's still a little bit of a feeling of, like a loss of luster that they don't get to match up against, the team at full strength that everyone's been talking about, that everyone says is better than them. But at the same time, if you're the Sixers, listen, this game still matters to us. This game could still be the difference between us getting that 1 seed and not.
What could come from this? If the Philly wins by 40, anything?
I mean, it's not like again, you're not, throwing a parade over it or anything, but it's still the matter of you won the season series. So again,
but if you blow them out, okay, you beat them without 4 guys. What if it's a close game?
It's a win. To me, I look at it as I'm not one of those guys who really looks at things necessarily like that. A win is a win. You don't look back and say, man, we should have blown that team out, but we just barely won. You won the game. It doesn't matter. And it's the NBA. The NBA is weird. Teams go on runs. You take your foot, we've seen it with the Sixers this year. You take your foot off the gas. You build a 20-point lead, take your foot off your gas in the third quarter. Teams go on a run in the fourth. They make it interesting. Stuff like that happens in the NBA. So I don't take much from – they just have to win. If they lose, that would be a bad sign. But if they win, a win is a win. Doesn't matter. And to me, it's just this stretch like we talked about before, this 7-game stretch that was looking extremely daunting. You already blew out the Mavericks. If now this Nets game isn't nearly what it was. So now all of a sudden that stretch doesn't seem quite as arduous as it maybe seems from the outset.
Well, and I agree with you. I don't care if you win by 1 or 41, win the game, move on. Whatever happened on that night doesn't happen. I'm the same boat as you are there. If they lose the game, though, that whole psyche of, man, we just lost to this team and they were missing a couple guys. What's going to happen when they're at full strength? Now, they're tied right now, identical records. Philly's got a much more daunting schedule than Brooklyn does. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't studied Brooklyn's schedule super hard, but I know that, after tonight, the Sixers basically have 5 more tough games, and then the rest of the season, the last 12, it gets pretty soft.
They do.
They get Miami mixed in there, but Atlanta's been playing better, and they're going to be in that mix. But really, it's a schedule that they should feast on those teams.
Yeah, Brooklyn plays Philly, Charlotte, at Miami, at New Orleans, Toronto, Boston, Phoenix, Toronto, Indy, Portland, back-to-back, Milwaukee, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, San Antonio, Chicago, Cleveland.
See, I would probably say the Sixers have the easier schedule there. When it's mixed in. There's a couple of playing against Denver. Portland's not an easy matchup. Listen, New Orleans is playing better right now, especially with the way Zion's playing. Who the heck on Brooklyn is going to defend Zion? And Phoenix, I think Phoenix might be the most underrated team in the NBA right now. They are really, really good. So that's a pretty tough schedule. It's going to be tough for the Nets to, again, I'm just, for me, if I'm looking at it from the Nets perspective, them coming together as a team and figuring all that out without those 3 big guys playing a lot just seems like, man, that's a really daunting task, even with the talent level.
It really stinks. I was really looking forward to this conversation and breaking it down and who's defending who, but you're shorthanded. They're shorthanded. I mean, I guess one question would be, who does Ben Simmons defend on a full Brooklyn team?
It's tough. I would probably, if I had to guess, and I don't know, Doc does some things that sometimes are out of my scope and I don't really quite understand them, but then he explains it after the game and it makes sense. But to me, if we're saying game 1 against Brooklyn, whenever that comes, I would imagine it would be Danny Green on Kyrie. Tobias would probably start on Durant, and then Ben would get Harden. That would be my guess of how it would start. because I don't think you can put. I think you had to put Seth Curry on Joe Harris. I can't imagine you put Seth Curry on Kyrie, because I think you're asking for trouble in that matchup. I think Brooklyn's going to do a lot of things to try to get that. Like they're probably going to, screen the heck out of things with Joe Harris to try to get Seth Curry switched onto those three guys. But if I had to guess, Ben Simmons from the onset guards Harden, and then it's just kind of a chess match from there to see how the pieces fit. Once Matisse Thybulle's in the game, once George Hill is in the mix, like how is that going to play out? I think it's going to be an evolving thing in a 7-game series.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like, any chance if Hill is back in the next 2 weeks that he could enter the starting lineup and that he would be the defender on, say, Kyrie in that kind of situation. By the time they would get to the Eastern Conference Finals, could you see a scenario that Hill has played enough that he essentially would be with the starting unit and Curry off the bench, or not happening?
I don't think it's happening. I think Doc will stick with the starting lineup. But what I will say is I 100% foresee games where George Hill is closing over Seth Curry. 100% I can imagine that. Because starting, let's be real, like starting doesn't matter that much. What matters way more is who closes. So if you get in that situation where they are just really picking on Seth Curry to start the game off, I could totally see George Hill coming in and playing that closer role. And I think, to be honest with you, Mike, I kind of think that's better. I think that line is better because not only for defensive purposes, George Hill is a ball handler who doesn't turn the ball over. You'd miss Seth Curry's shooting to be sure, but offensively, I actually think George Hill next to Ben Simmons is a better fit than Seth Curry. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Not that Seth Curry is a poor fit, because like we said, like he shoots the heck out of the basketball. That helps Ben Simmons an awful lot too. But I just think having that extra traditional point guard in a guy like George Hill could be really beneficial with Ben Simmons, especially in the fourth quarter and kind of crunch time of games.
Yeah, tonight should be interesting because no LaMarcus Aldridge, no Blake Griffin. So we're going to get the first look at what Brooklyn, and even with LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, he's not stopping Joel Embiid. So it'll be interesting. How do you think Brooklyn, what do you think they will throw at Joel Embiid tonight? Or will they not try to show anything in this particular matchup now that it is what it is?
I think it's the latter, Mike. And I think even if they were at full strength, I don't think you would see the full bag of tricks of what they would maybe potentially throw at him in a postseason series, because there's no benefit to it. I mean, let the guy kind of, let him feel good against you, and then, you throw something completely different at him in the postseason. With that said, I personally don't know how good of a coach Steve Nash is. I don't think anyone knows how good of a coach Steve Nash is. Is he going to be like Nick Nurse? And is he going to find that kind of right strategy where it's like, all right, I'm going to just take the ball completely out of Joel Embiid's hands and let everyone else beat me? Personally, I kind of think that is the right strategy. Or is he going to say, I want to give DeAndre Jordan a chance to maybe get him one-on-one and then just kind of randomly throw double teams at him here and there? I don't know what the strategy is going to be, because I don't really know 100% what Steve Nash is as a basketball coach. So I can't expect them to throw anything. At least I don't expect them to throw anything exotic at him tonight. I think it'll be pretty straightforward. Maybe a double here and there if Joel really starts to cook. But I don't think you're going to see anything crazy until the postseason.
A lot of Sixers questions have been coming in throughout the conversation throughout the day here. So let me throw a couple your way. Do you feel that the Nets can flip the switch?
I don't know. It's the talent level is enough where it's possible. And you have a guy like Kevin Durant and a guy like Kyrie. Both of those guys have won championships, so they know what it takes. James Harden has been on deep playoff runs. I know he hasn't won it, but he came pretty darn close to getting there and taking down the Warriors a couple years ago. So they have players, again, DeAndre Jordan has been on plenty of playoff runs. Marcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, like these guys have played in big games. So it's not like it's a young team that's never been there before. With that said, I kind of think about the last 2 years with the Sixers and think about, the better example is 2 years ago when they get Jimmy Butler, they get Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid was so banged up down the stretch, he barely played with those guys. And it just seemed like they never quite got it together. Like they were a collection of talent. Like if you compare that starting five to this starting five, I think it's certainly more talented, but I think this is a more cohesive and a better fitting starting five than that was 2 years ago. And I think that's something you have to factor in. And again, as I talked about before, you have 3 ball dominant players. So how is that going to work when those guys haven't played that much together?
Dom wants to know, he says the Nets are clearly the best team in the East. They're not even trying, and they won't until the playoffs. TBD to see if they have the ability to flip the switch. Do you feel like they aren't trying and it's still neck and neck?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't discount that amount of talent. When you have arguably 3 of the top 10 offensive players in the entire league, it's going to be really difficult. And the Sixers are a very, very good defensive team. And like, I guess the way I look at it too, Mike, if I'm going into that series, you could argue that Joel Embiid is the best player in that series, but it's hard to say that the Nets don't have then 2, 3, and 4 of the most talented players in that series. So that's where, if the talent could overcome, for sure, but it's still a team game, Mike, right? I mean, of course, LeBron James has dragged a few really good few like kind of mediocre teams into great positions, but look at like the Warriors and their runs. Like that was still a good team. Even the Lakers last year, LeBron had AD and that team, they were good. KCP was great for them. Rondo was great for them. They needed those guys to step up. So that is still to kind of be seen if they have the right pieces that will step up and if they have the cohesiveness that will come together when the playoffs start.
Do you think the Sixers are strong enough to make the finals, or are they missing that key player? Now, I answered and said, I don't think as constructed, Hill might be the player. I think they still need that player, and they have him. He just hasn't played yet.
I think Hill can make a huge difference. I truly believe that. That's not just lip service. I really think because of his skill set and what he can do and what they are lacking, I think he can help in a big way. I think they can make the finals. Brooklyn it's going to be a problem. Brooklyn's really good. I think they can beat anybody but Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to get, and I think, but I don't think it's, some people just say like, oh, the Nets are way too good. I don't buy that. I think it's a series. I think the Sixers will absolutely give them all they can handle. My concern, Mike, is, and it's been my concern with this team for years, is shot creation. I don't know that they have enough of that to beat teams on a regular basis. Like in the offseason, let's say you flip a Seth Curry and get whatever player you want to pick as a guy who's like a pure shot creator, that could perhaps elevate them to another level. But I think as they stand, they could certainly.
Then you're losing one of your floor spacers.
Well, sure, but you got to get a guy who can do both, right? You got to have a shot creator that can hit an open jumper too. But I just think, this season.
Well, now, what do you want, Dame Lillard?
Not Dame Lillard, but a guy who. There are guys who maybe have other deficiencies, but they can dribble a basketball and they can shoot from the outside. An elevated version of George Hill is not too much to ask. I'm Kyle Lowry, like that's a guy like that would have been perfect. Like ideally, he really would have been. But I think this year, anything that's short of the Eastern Conference Finals is definitely a disappointment. And listen, the Nets series, that would be really, really difficult. And I think it would come down to 6 or 7 games for sure.
They took a little fun out of this game tonight. You'll be there. You going, right?
Yeah, McCormick swindled me out of a game later in the season for this one. So
yeah, I saw this. So you flipped them for the Pelicans game?
I sure did. So I will not be seeing Zion Williamson. I will now be seeing this game tonight. So
you got a half-ass Brooklyn team. He gets Zion. Good trade. Paul Hudrick will be there tonight for 97.3 ESPN.com. Follow him at Paul Hudrick for everything Sixers Nets tonight. It's a battle for first place. The Nets are kind of going very shorthanded, but this is a game that the Sixers have to take care of. And if they want that number 1 seed, they got to start gobbling up these wins. We're running out. About 19 games left in the schedule for both these teams. Down the stretch they come. All right, Paul, we'll see you Friday, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Take care, man.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Don't forget his Coming In for a Landing podcast. Him and Kevin McCormick kind of cut it all up there in a nice half-hour conversation. Check that out at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. All right, I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Good conversation all throughout the show. Give me your thoughts on Sixers Nets tonight. Jeremy Ballard wants to know, he's playing lights out, but what if Embiid gets hurt? Well, what happens if LeBron gets hurt? What happens if Kawhi gets hurt? Giannis gets hurt? you're screwed. That's what happens when you lose your best player. You lose a player of that magnitude, your team's done. Can't replace those guys. Although of all the teams that lose their star, I think the Sixers are best equipped, more so than the Lakers losing LeBron or Kawhi and the Clippers, because they can change the complexion of their team and build it around Ben Simmons. That's the difference. They can build around what Ben Simmons does really well. You know, with him dribble, driving, kicking out, a lot of threes, bombs away. A lot of other teams can't do that. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, you can download the app. Go to 973ESPN.com/app. I want to tell you about my guys over at Trifecta Therapeutics, the premier sports rehab performance center. They're in South Jersey, Glassboro. Are you tired of being in pain? You know, I got this pain in my arm, right in my elbow area. My gosh, I woke up, I said, what the heck did I do? Their team has the highest trained and skilled docs, and they can help get the pain out of that elbow area. They take a unique approach to physical therapy and rehab with each of their clients using cutting-edge equipment, treatment plans, and methods to get you feeling better, playing better, and staying better. The best part is you don't need a script. You can start today. Trifecta Therapeutics offers a range of services for active lifestyle clients, including sports physical therapy, ACL injury rehab, sports performance training, weekend warrior, finely tuned athlete, highest professional leagues, collegiate leagues. Trifecta helps the pros and the Joes. Stop settling for less. Get the best. Schedule your free discovery session today. Use code ESPN Radio at trifectatherapeutics.com or call today. Phillies lineup's out. I'll give it to you in a second. By the way, I did want to mention that the Flyers were awful last night. They lost 6-1. They were down 4-1 after one. An embarrassing effort. Team in total disarray. Orange and black. Over on the other side of the street, they were in New York, I get it. Phillies fell apart in game one, lost in extra innings. And in game two, lost, could not muster up a couple of hits. Tough sledding there. We told you earlier, Mickey Moniak is up. Adam Haseley is down. It did not a move that they made. I think Haseley is up because I think he asked for some personal time off. So, hey, the Moniak is up. A lot of people have been asking. You got to do something in center field. The lineup is out today. So, what are they doing in center field? Well, they're going with Roman Quinn. He will bat eighth tonight. The lineup is very similar to what it's been for the most part. Phillies lineup is McCutchen, Hoskins, Harper, Real Muto, Bohm, Segura, Torres, Quinn, Wheeler. So DD is out of the lineup tonight. They're throwing a lefty, Peterson. So no DD tonight. By the way, DD, I'm a fan of DD. I like DD. Whew, he's rough in the field, man. Holy moly. Some routine stuff he struggles with. You know, Alec Bohm, he's playing short left and third sometimes. McCutchen's got no range. DD has zero range. Segura's at second base. They got some defensive problems up the middle. You need to be strong up the middle. They're weak up the middle. Haseley last night, awful play in center field, cost him a run. He comes up slow on the ball from Pilar. Then Villar comes up and rips a double. That cost him after the umpire blew the call at first base. It's not even that he blew the call. I get it. It's a bang-bang play. They went to replay and got it wrong. How did you watch it on replay and not say he's out? It's unbelievable to me how bad these guys are. So bad. Like the one the other night with the toe. He doesn't touch the plate. Fine. They called him safe. It's inconclusive. Last night, how do you get that wrong? My God, how do you get that wrong? And then the next guy hits the ball, the little humpback liner to center. Haseley doesn't come up on it. And then Villar rips a double. 2 runs come in. Quinn's going to play center tonight. Moniak's up. I would imagine, well, they got a lefty, so Moniak's a lefty. There's another problem. They got 3 lefties now on the bench tonight. Miller, Moniak, and Joyce. So you got 3 lefties sitting on your bench. No fun. You know, Atlanta's got 5 lefties in their bullpen. Dombrowski has to know that. You can't build a bench with 5 lefties when your number one opponent in your division's got 5 lefties in their bullpen. Come on, man. I'm not a GM, but I can see that. I can't build a bench like that. They got to do better. I'm not knocking Dombrowski. He's done a nice job, but you got to know that. You got 5 lefties in that bullpen. You got 3 lefties on your bench. You got to figure out something better. We'll see what they do in center field. I wrote a piece about it today. They got a problem in center. They know it. I mean, what did I thought Girardi's quotes after the game were pretty telling, to be honest with you. He said something after the game that was pretty telling to me if you kind of listen to what he said. Let me pull the quote up so that I get it right. But he said, by the way, Haseley and Quinn are hitting a combined 135. I mean, that's terrible. But Girardi said, right now, these are the guys we have. I think if we felt they were ready, they would be here. But I don't think we feel they are where they need to be. does he include himself with the we? Or is he saying, look, we as the front office, right now, these are the guys we have. I think if we felt they were ready, meaning the guys in Lehigh, they would be here. But I don't think we feel they're where they need to be. I think Girardi's message is, look, the message with Herrera at the beginning of this was he needs more time. He hasn't seen live hitting in 2 years. I mean, how many of us, if you had a chance, if there was betting odds on who the center fielder would be the first game after the All-Star break, you're probably picking Herrera, right? In my 10 predictions for the Phillies season, I had Herrera on the list. I think he'll end up playing the most games in center field this year. I think they're just kind of doing this dog and pony show because they had to. They don't want the PR backlash. Moniak's up. We'll see how they use him. You know, I said yesterday, I would go with Moniak and Kingery, let them platoon in center. This platoon's not working. I probably keep Quinn around for the speed. I mean, his speed is so dynamic, he has to be there. I don't agree, by the way, with Girardi, what he said yesterday, that he would allow him to steal the base. I get it. He steals every base. He's safe every single time. It's just a bad precedent. You don't steal third base with 2 outs. Quinn could moonwalk home on a base hit. He doesn't need to be on third base. You don't need to steal that base. He literally could moonwalk home on any crack of the bat. If he takes off, he's scoring on anything. There's no need to steal third base with 2 outs. That's a little league play, what he did yesterday. That's the kid who's on second base and is staring at the coach saying, can I steal? Can you give me the steal sign? Can I steal? Can I go? No, you're on second base with 2 outs. You're not stealing. And Quinn steals anyway. And then Girardi, after the game, says, I don't mind that he stole the base. That's a terrible message. Football at 4 is next. Sports Bash Live. Are the Eagles still interested in Deshaun Watson? Coming up. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops Mondays and Thursdays at 6 a.m. You get the latest Inside the Birds podcast tomorrow morning at 6. Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan breaking down all the latest Eagles draft news and offseason news as it happens. Geoff Mosher is with me here for today's edition of Football at 4. I always like hearing that from Jeffrey Lurie in the, coming in there, that he will do everything possible to continue to try to help this team win. But a lot of people, Geoff, feel that he is what is preventing this team from win. Like, it's weird. Like this, we talked a little Monday, and I thought about it more, and I'm like, how did it get to this point where Lurie was kind of like a persona non grata? He was like just like the happy-go-lucky owner guy who was up there, and now it's like a totally different perception. Now, you've been around this team for a long time, covered a lot of different incarnations of Eagles. Andy, were you around for Ray at all?
No, I was not around for Ray.
So Andy, Chip, Doug, now Nick. At any point when you were covering the team, did you say, that owner's a problem?
No, actually, I did not ever feel he was a problem, because now, knowing that no owner is perfect, right, and that everybody has flaws, I never heard anything other about Jeffrey that would lead me to think that he is interfering in a way that was starting to control the trajectory of the franchise. He was always described during the Andy Reid era as an involved owner who does take a lot of notes and who does have his finger on the pulse of what goes on, but he's always been very caring for his players, caring for his coaches, willing to spend money, willing to upgrade facilities, and obviously a forward thinker. You did always know that Jeffrey Lurie was going to be more involved in as far as being present, right? In fact, I heard some strange stories. I like, him being. I think there was a time where there was a draft where, he had been divorced from Christina Lurie, and she was still a part of the franchise. I think she still is in some capacity, right? And that she's in the war room, he's in the war room, and his new wife, I believe, was also the wife he has now is in the war room. And maybe for some that was kind of a little bit of a weird dynamic, but still
more dysfunction than anything else I've heard with the Eagles so far.
Well, remember, she works for the franchise and had a very high title, I believe, in the business or the charities. I forget. I apologize for not remembering, but something like that doesn't make you think that my gosh, the franchise is in terrible hands or there's something crazy going on. It was just kind of different.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people look at dysfunction. We touched on it the other day, and I thought it was an interesting conversation, this dynamic between the analytics departments and the scouting departments. And, I feel like a lot of teams kind of go through this. But my question is, we asked about this Alec Halaby, and like, how long ago or how much have you heard about him, and what kind of insight and what kind of, like, when you saw the story from the other come out, were you kind of like, huh, that's interesting? Or were you like, I've already known that Alec has had a hand in, decisions that this team has made?
Well, I think what the story said, Mike, was that, and I'll reaffirm similarly what I know is that people suspect that his voice carries a lot more weight than they feel it should. He's certainly, people understand that analytics is important to the franchise. It's important to Howie and Geoff. And of course, you're going to have an analytics staff and someone has to lead that. And there's a role there. But when you're kind of perceived as Howie's guy, which is something I've heard for quite a while, or Jeffrey Lurie's guy, and you're in a different department of the building, there's a fear or a concern, I should say, not fear, a concern that the owner might, or the GM might gravitate toward Alec Halaby's position on something more so than weighing it as 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of the conversation. Like, that's the guy whose ultimate say is going to have more say than me because the owner likes him or likes the process of what he does more than per se the process of what I do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at, is that for a long, long time, I have heard that there are people in the building in different departments, whether it's coaching or scouting, that feel scouting. When I say scouting, I mean personnel, right? That feel like what he does takes too much precedence over what they do. That's their feeling on it.
Right. So essentially you have, like, let's say in the past, you would have Peterson, Roseman, Laurie, and they're 33, 33, 33. You're saying Halaby is the guy that comes in and kind of has the ear and says, we're going to go in this direction.
Well, let's kind of set the stage, right? You have your draft meetings that take place for weeks and weeks and weeks before the actual draft, right? And you're evaluating players and you're going through scenarios. And when you're in player evaluation, it involves the scouting staff, the coaching staff, the GM, the owner has probably been involved, and then your analytics staff. And so when you're haggling it out there and trying to set your board and do your rankings, right? And someone, say, hypothetically from the scouting staff says, I don't think this guy is really what we're looking for. Or he's a good player, but he can only do X and Y. And then someone from the analytics staff, in this case, Alec Halaby, says, oh, no, we've ran the numbers, or we've researched it, we've watched the tape and cross-referenced it, and we think that he is absolutely the type of guy. Well, then you have an issue. Well, then you have an argument, which every team has, a debate. But does the analytics guy win every single time, or does he win in critical junctures? And then we go back to kind of like the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside pick there, where that was clearly more of an analytics department preference than, say, scouting or coaching, right?
Right. I mean, it seems that, like, there's so many mixed messages here where you hear these stories. Well, the scouts wanted one guy, and the other side wanted this guy, and when in the end it's Jeffrey Lurie. Remember the when was it when there was this press conference and they said, who has say in the draft? We all do. Well, who breaks the tie? And Jeffrey Lurie is like, everybody, they thought it was a joke, right? They thought, like, Jeffrey Lurie's got no. But it turns out that, like, that's the actual, like, hey, Jeffrey Lurie does have on the when these two guys can't break a tie, Jeff Lurie comes in and breaks the tie. Like, so to me, like, that to me is more of the problem. And the analytics, again, I don't think this is just an Eagles problem, though. I feel like this is a problem everywhere. No?
I wouldn't say it's a problem. No, I think some teams do a good job of at least balancing harmoniously the departments, or they emphasize, like, for example, I know of a franchise that I'm not going to mention their name, but that believes in analytics, but they don't believe in using analytics to draft players. That when you talk analytics in football with this franchise, their concept of it is, all right, it's fourth down in this part of the field. Like, do I go for it? Do I not go for it? Do I go for two after this touchdown or not? Based on the score, based on what we're at. Okay, they've told me that they don't necessarily use analytics heavily in their draft process. The Eagles obviously do. So that's just two ways of looking at it and doing it differently. Joe Banner, Mike, who brought analytics to the Eagles when he started with a few guys from MIT after Jeffrey brought the team, has told Adam and I on the Inside the Birds platforms many times that he also believes that you should not rely heavily on analytics. They didn't in the draft. Okay. So clearly somewhere along the line that has changed, where it now is a big part of what they do in the draft. So yes, some teams do have a difficult marriage between these staffs, because they're people who represent two distinctly different sides of looking at a player. But some teams, I think, balance it much better than the Eagles do.
Yeah, I know that people are posting questions too. If you want a question for Geoff for Football at 4, let's get a couple questions. I got a couple other things I want to hit on, but Jalen wants to know, if Jalen Phillips falls to the back end of the first round due to medical concerns, should the Eagles try to move up to take a chance on his upside? It kind of ties into a question that I wanted to get your opinion on about, could the Eagles have another draft day trade in the works here? Do we see the Eagles? Do we feel strongly that they can make a second pick in the first round this year?
Yeah, I think that anything is on the table, Mike. Adam and I have talked about, don't think that they're just definitely going to sit at 12 and make a pick. They could move up, maybe up to 9, perhaps, to get a player that they want, because that's ahead of Dallas. They could move down, perhaps, if they're at 12 and there's a quarterback still on the board. Could they try to trade up into the back of the first round? It would make sense if there's a player like Jalen Phillips that you bring up here that they really like, because they have 11 picks And to me, it's very doubtful that they're going to make 11 picks. You know,
Right.
You want to use that for flexibility. I don't know if Jalen Phillips would be the guy that they would target, but I think common sense says when teams move back into the first round, it's usually for a quarterback or a premier pass rusher. So Jalen Phillips is considered one of the better pass rushers in the draft. So I think your radar could be up for a move like that. But clearly the medicals would have to, as the person who asked the question, would have to really, really play into that.
Now, the kid from Penn State, Owe, if he started to drop in the back end of the first round, is that a guy that you trade back into the first round to try? Like, are there certain players that you think the Eagles would target if they're in the 24, 25, 26 range, that they would want to go from 37 because that guy's falling?
It's possible. A pass rusher is definitely a position that they like to capitalize on in the first round, and that they'd be willing to. When you've looked at their trades, they have traded up in the first round for pass rushers before. So they've done it with Brandon Graham. And so I definitely think that that's an area you would keep your eye out. You know, Owe is a very raw kid who has unbelievable athleticism. And, you know, all you have to do is watch Inside the Draft with Greg Cosell on our Inside the Birds platforms, because he raved about the kid's athletic ability. Now, the fact that he hasn't played a ton of football and he had 0 sacks and he's just kind of coming into his own and is raw means you need some time to develop him. I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to give up a first-round pick for someone that they feel they have to develop a lot, but I think this kid is probably going to wind up going back end of the first round.
Right. And Josho asked, do you think there's any way the Eagles could trade for another first rounder? So we have 2 this draft. Maybe the Eagles can get Smith and Surtain. My question, kind of off of Joe's, would be, you're talking about pass rusher. They're at 12. You don't take the pass rusher at 12, but how about moving back to 15 where that Patriots pick is and saying, you know what, we'll get another asset and we'll get the pass rusher? Because I kind of agree with what you're saying. The blueprint for them has been to get pass rushers early in the draft.
Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going to want to move down unless it's that scenario where every single guy they've coveted is gone before them. I think they're more likely to move up to get a guy like Patrick Surtain, perhaps J.C. Horn, than they are to move back. I think if they move back, it's because they probably couldn't move up, couldn't get a deal done. And then one by one, all the names that you would commonly associate with the Eagles at that point, Horn, Surtain, Waddle, perhaps one of the offensive linemen, Slater and Sewell, are all off the board. And at that point, it's like Micah Parsons, and you know that the Eagles aren't going to take Micah Parsons, so they move back. And by the way, there was a commenter on Monday, right? We did this show on Monday on our YouTube channel. It said Mosher's always pushing for the Eagles to take Micah Parsons. And sometimes, Mike, I wonder again, if people actually listen to you and I talk, how many times have I said the Eagles will not take? I mean, you guys have been asking me for that for almost 2 months. And I said that they will never take a linebacker or Micah Parsons in the first round. So I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I agree. You have not said, I don't believe, one time that Parsons is even in play.
Right.
With the 6th pick, essentially, and then now even at the 12th pick, you don't feel that's the case. I want to get some couple quick thoughts now that Howard and Wilson have both spoken. And the message, like, these guys get these 1-year deals, kind of low-risk signings. Both guys, well, at least Wilson should get a lot of playing time. But the what do you like about these 1-year veteran deals that that help this team out, but also help them move on?
What I like about them, Mike, is that they give you so much flexibility. When you sign guys to a 1-year deal, you haven't made a long-term investment in them, and they also know they're on a prove-it deal, so they've got to play their rear ends off if they want to continue to have a career. But then they also are of the understanding that this team is not committed to them for the long term, and if the team drafts somebody better at that position, they don't have any right to complain about it. They're not any, they're actually trying to make the team. I mean, Jordan Howard is not guaranteed to make the 53, depending on what the Eagles do in the draft or the rest of free agency and what they have at running back. Eric Wilson probably more so, because he knows the defense and they need him, and they're not, blessed at linebacker. But if they happen to hit on a second round pick, right? Let's say they use their second round pick on a linebacker, on a Nick Bolton or somebody like that. And this kid's really good. And Alex Singleton's really developed. Well, you know what? Then you play who's playing well. You don't feel committed to have to play guys because you paid them X amount of dollars.
Let me ask you this. I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of people like Bolton in round 2. He's more of your Mike middle linebacker, run stuffer. Wilson is more of a defender, in pass coverage. Right. Singleton's kind of like, he's just kind of a blue collar, does everything. He's not great at anything. But how will the linebackers in this defense be different than the way Schwartz used them?
Well, it's my understanding, as we've talked about, we know they're going to play a lot of the Zimmer system, right? And Zimmer does a lot of cover 2, but he also does a lot of cover 3. It looks like cover 2, but then as we all remember from the Tampa 2 defenses back when they were winning, that middle linebacker is a coverage guy more so than a thumper. It's the outside linebacker, Derek Brooks, in that defense who was the thumper, right? So your middle linebacker kind of drops back and covers that middle of the field while your split safeties cover their thirds of the field, so you make a cover 3 look. So that's why I expect from Eric Wilson to be more of a coverage guy and play that, be able to carry that deep middle, which is not something the Eagles have had for quite a while now, maybe since Jordan Hicks. I don't know. They never even played that style of defense, right?
Right.
You wouldn't want TJ Edwards dropping all the way back. You wouldn't want Alex Singleton doing that. You probably would want Davion Taylor to be able to do that. However, he's a very raw prospect who needs a lot of development. So Eric Wilson can play that, and Singleton can play that kind of outside linebacker role that is more of a tackler, which is more of what he's good at than coverage.
Yeah, I was going to say, so if you're watching the Eagles defense and like linebacker play, you should anticipate that they have a little bit more on their plate, or they put more importance on that position in this style of defense than what Jim Schwartz did. Is that Jim Schwartz by design, or was it because he didn't have talent?
Well, it's a little, yes and no. I think Jim certainly put more emphasis on the front 4. However, Jim wanted a linebacker last year. He really wanted a real linebacker last year, and all he got was a guy in the 3rd round who most teams had as a 5th, 6th, 7th, or undrafted free agent. So he didn't really get what he wanted as far as a talent level linebacker. But he was here when the team had Jordan Hicks, right? And he was here when the team had Nigel Bradham, who played at a fairly high level for a couple of years there. So I agree with you, though. When you look at the Mike Zimmer system, you also see a lot of linebacker blitzes. And I imagine if Gannon wants to do that, he's going to have to feel comfortable that he has the right type of players for that. Singleton has a good nose for getting to the football, and I thought he blitzed well last year. So maybe that's one of the 2 guys that he'd feel comfortable with blitzing the quarterback with. I don't know if he has anybody else that he's comfortable in that. Yeah, that's true. Wilson. Yeah, but Wilson was put into a role. He really was a backup who was forced into that role when Eric Kendricks got hurt. I think he'd like a little bit more tenacity. Wilson may have had 3 sacks. It doesn't mean he might have been in the right place at the right time, more so than he's a great pressure creator.
All right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Eagles, tomorrow we will be just 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. I'm going to miss it. There's so much going on here. 12, there's a lot of players in play. The Eagles have a lot of holes. This is what a bad team does. It makes the draft very interesting. This one's very interesting. And then, of course, what's next? The mini camp stuff, this voluntary camp, a lot of teams are backing out. What do we see happening next?
That's a great question. I know that there was an announcement today from the NFLPA and the NFL on what the template of the phase 1, 2, and 3 will look like. And looks like a lot of virtual meetings early on, and not until I think May 17th do you actually get on-field type of work. And we'll have to see by then if these teams that are sort of having their players say we're not coming, if anything changes. But it does look like right now that a lot of veteran players especially have convinced for the greater good that players are going to exercise their right to be voluntary and not show up at any in-person on-field activities. But things can change, as they always do in the NFL. We'll see.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. So get the latest edition. It comes out tomorrow morning at 6. Andrew's here to talk more draft tomorrow. Adam on Friday. Geoff is back on Monday. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the hotline. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. Take care, man.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Is back on Monday's show, as we said, and we have plenty more on the NFL. Jeff Kerr tonight at 5:30. We're going to talk more draft overview of the draft. All the teams involved. Jeff Kerr will be doing a lot more stuff with us coming up here for football and draft and all that stuff. Does a great job covering the league, both Eagles and nationally for CBS Sports. All right, coming up on the other side, we've got the Sixers and Nets tonight. There's a lot to get into with not only the Sixers and the Nets, but the most important questions surrounding this Eastern Conference. Kevin Pelton, ESPN, former front office insider, going to join us next. right, 4 o'clock hour of the show. It's brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the Prop Swap app today. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app right now. Kevin Pelton, ESPN NBA writers in the house, is the Sixers and the Nets. We got this great matchup, except for the Nets decided not to show up tonight. We'll talk more about it in the Eastern Conference playoff race with Kevin now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, some of the Nets will be there.
Not many. No Durant, no Blake Griffin, no LaMarcus Aldridge, and, of course, we know no Harden. What's the message from the Nets here tonight? They had a chance to play Durant tonight and not the other night. So what are they telling NBA executives, teams? What's the message from them tonight about, we got a number one seed on the line? We'll sit these Durant.
Well, I think the message number one is that getting to the playoffs healthy is a bigger priority than where we're seated going into the playoffs, which, I think is an approach that a lot of teams are probably going to take over the last month of this season here in terms of not pushing players. And, Durant was an interesting choice because presumably he could have played one half of the back-to-back. The one thing we don't know is, to what extent their medical staff advised them that it was better for him to play on Tuesday when they were already in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, as opposed to today after the travel day. That could have been a factor in their decision. But yeah, I mean, this is certainly a more important game when you look at the tiebreaker and the ability to not only get a win, but also give the Sixers a loss than yesterday's game against the Timberwolves was going to be for them. So it's a bit surprising from that standpoint.
Right. Kevin, I mean, you got three teams in play essentially for the one seed, but two of them are tied right now. The other one's 3.5 back. I would imagine these final 15, 20 games, I think we're like 19 games left for Philly and Brooklyn. That jockeying for the one seed is the biggest story because the one seed doesn't have to play the 3 seed in the playoffs. So the number one seed in the East, does it not matter or does it?
I think it definitely does. And exactly for that reason you laid out, because, even above and beyond the home court advantage, if you have 1 and 2 meeting in the conference finals, it seems especially important this year because of the gap between the top 3 teams in the East that have established themselves and everyone else. But, to the same point about the importance of seeding, Milwaukee also does not necessarily seem to be pushing for the number 1 seed or even the number 2 seed as hard as they could be. We've seen Giannis Antetokounmpo miss an extended period of time here with the knee soreness, and they've also had a couple of games now where they've basically rested all of their starters.
Well, they've been burned in the past by pushing too hard. Now they've gone the other side here. But, all right, those are the 3. Who's the 4th? And does the 4th matter?
I do think it matters in terms of like that team's going to win a playoff series and test whoever gets the number 1 seed in the second round. My answer in this has changed from yesterday, which is maybe overly reactive from that standpoint, but we had a 5-on-5 that we did yesterday on ESPN.com, and all of us chose the Miami Heat. But after seeing Boston back up their, 2 or 3 game winning streak, I think 3 game winning streak with a strong effort last night in Portland, that one could have gone either way. Jason Tatum making a key basket in the final 30 seconds to get them the win there. But, that's another solid performance. Boston is probably more higher. Well, it's close in terms of higher end talent, I guess, but if you go 1 through 6 on the Celtics, I think I would take that group over Miami. It's Miami's kind of 7 and below that would be the argument for the Heat. So, now that Boston is playing a bit more like we expected coming into this season, I'm going to take them.
All right. I say often, Kevin, you have to have a player that can be the best player on the best team to win a title. I see right now 5 of those guys: LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis, KD, Joel Embiid. Is he in the 5?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the other question we got asked there is who's the best player in the Eastern Conference, which is a loaded question because what does best player mean? Over the course of the 82-game regular season, I think Giannis and Harden are often the most valuable players in the East. Kevin Durant certainly could establish himself as that best player come playoff time. I think before he got hurt in 2019, he would have been at that top of the group. But the way that Joel Embiid has played all season long, the kind of dominance that he's had both in the paint and with his face-up game from the mid-range, the ability to make contributions on both ends. Like if you're playing one game today, Joel Embiid is my top pick in the Eastern Conference.
Right. I was going to say, so for this year right now, they got Durant, they got Harden, they got Kyrie, but do the Sixers have the best player?
I think they do, although, what you would say is that the gap is not very large, and that Brooklyn has, two players that belong in that conversation. Kyrie is not far beyond it. So I do think the Nets have the most talented roster, and the Sixers are, to an extent, I think, betting on the fit of their shooters around Joel Embiid to overcome the sheer talent.
So if this game was going on at full blast tonight, both teams had full capacity. How do you like the matchup between Philly, who's a defensive-minded team who can score, against the Nets, who obviously are a score-first team? Does Philly have the defensive makeup to combat these three terrific scores? And then they're, these veteran cast-offs that they've added.
From a personnel standpoint, yes, Philly certainly does. I mean, I think the matchups look favorable on that end. To me, the biggest question in this series, I mean, number one, I guess I would say is, as well as they match up, no one's going to shut down Brooklyn's three stars. That's why the Nets are as good as they are and as exciting a team in the playoffs as they are. The fundamental question, I think, of a possible Nets-Sixers playoff series as we see them is, can the Nets either slow down Joel Embiid enough or, create problems for him at the other end with their shooting and quickness to, make up that disadvantage at the other end of the court? And I don't know that we're going to get a real answer to that. Presumably a big part of the reason they wanted LaMarcus Aldridge is that he gives them that option of someone who can, pick and pop Joel Embiid on the offensive end, but also brings enough size to match up with him defensively, as opposed to going small and putting Jeff Green or Kevin Durant at center.
Kevin Pelton, NBA writer for ESPN. He's host of the Pelton Cast tonight, Sixers Nets. Over the years, Kevin, we've talked a lot about Ben Simmons and his offense and this and that. When you watch the Sixers now, do you feel that they have kind of told him, don't worry about the offense, and have elevated Tobias Harris as that secondary offensive player, where maybe Brett Brown in the past wanted Ben Simmons to be the secondary offensive player? Has this regime maybe said, you don't need to be the second offensive guy?
I mean, definitely that stretch where Embiid was out of the lineup and Tobias Harris was as productive offensively as he was, he became the go-to guy offensively during that stretch. I do think the Sixers are probably at their most difficult to defend when Simmons is aggressively looking for his own offense. We saw that period of, whether it was approximately a month before the All-Star game when he was super aggressive and how effective he was. And I would love to get him back to that point, but I don't know that you necessarily need it to be successful in the playoffs because of the fact that you've got Harris and Embiid to carry a lot of the load offensively.
So watching Tobias Harris this year, Kevin, are you seeing a different Tobias Harris? He's been a good player. He's been a 19-point player guy. He's right about the same average, but is he different?
I think certainly as compared to last season, his efficiency and the ability to create his own shot without sacrificing efficiency are two places he's taken a step forward. And that's, really what distinguishes star players often in this league.
All right. A lot of people have commented today as we're on the live stream and the chat coming in, and people say, hey, people are discounting Milwaukee. So is it Philly and Brooklyn, or is Milwaukee equal or maybe better than those teams?
I mean, I think it's funny because even though Milwaukee is clearly not having anything close to the regular season they had the last 2 years, I think it's possible they're better built for the playoffs with the addition of Drew Holiday and taking Eric Bledsoe and his issues as an outside shooter out of the mix. We have seen them at times kind of get up to that level. I think of the Milwaukee Clippers game that was nationally televised on a Sunday afternoon, and that seemed like a real test for the Bucks, a close game. And, their version of Tobias Harris is probably Chris Middleton, who's been asked to do a lot more of the playmaking late in games than he was in past years, where it was really running through Giannis. And then in the playoffs, teams were able to build a wall around the paint, dare the Bucks outside shooters to make them pay, and have success that way. It's a little more difficult to do that against Middleton for the same reasons as kind of the Harris-Simmons combination in Philly. So I think it's a possibility it could be a stronger Milwaukee team than we saw in the last two playoffs. And they did get to the conference finals in 2019. Like, everyone thinks of them as complete playoff washouts, but they won the first 2 games of that series. Were very close to going up 3-0 on Toronto in the conference finals that year. And who knows how different history was. So yeah, I think they absolutely should be in that mix. But if you're the 3 seed and you have to go through both Brooklyn and Philadelphia without home court advantage in either of those series, that's a huge uphill task.
Agree. Kevin Pelton's with us, ESPN NBA writer. I'll leave you with this. George Hill has not played. Is he a big enough addition to make a big enough difference come playoff time?
I guess we'll see is the cop-out answer on that. I think that of the guys who went to legitimate contenders, Denver pushed themselves into that group with the addition of Aaron Gordon, and unfortunately probably is now out of it with Jamal Murray's ACL injury. But if you take Denver out of the mix, of the guys who went to legit championship contenders, George Hill is probably the best player of that group at the deadline. So I'm excited to see, how he looks physically when he's able to get back on the court, how well he fits in this group. But, his skill set, his ability to knock down open shots, defend multiple positions, that's a pretty seamless fit. I don't know that you need, a full 2 months to get him integrated ahead of the playoffs.
Yeah, that should be interesting to see what they do there. Very good defensive player. So that would be another interesting piece to add to the whole Sixers Nets dynamic. So at this point right now, Nets your favorite, or are you taking the other 7 and somebody of that 7 gets out?
Yeah, this was another question that came up on ESPN.com yesterday, and I would go with the field at this point. I think the Nets are the favorites for sure, but especially when you consider that, for the reasons we've talked about, Philly is the favorite now to get the number 1 seed, and the advantages that's going to convey this year. I definitely don't think I could go over 50% for the Nets at this point.
All right. Well, I know tonight lost a little luster, but still should be fun. Sixers Nets, Sixers Clippers Friday, Sixers Warriors Monday, Sixers Suns on Wednesday. And oh, by the way, Sixers Bucks back-to-back next week as well. So the Sixers continuing this stretch of games, and somehow they've gotten through it, still holding on to that number 1 seed. They got Sixers Nets tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin Pelton, the NBA writer from ESPN. Check out his podcast, The Pelton Cast. Great NBA stuff. They're 5 for 5 on the Eastern Conference playoffs. Check that out as well over at ESPN.com. Kevin, good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Excellent point that he made about the fact that this thing right now, that the Brooklyn Nets have essentially said, hey, we are going to, I think the health part of it is something that we really haven't taken in, is that, hey, they want to get to the finish line healthy, as the Sixers do too. So both teams have 19 games left. Both teams have 37 wins. Should be interesting. Who stays healthiest down the stretch? Could be the big key. All right, when we come back, what is going on with the Phillies? They made a move today, and Joe Girardi said something about Adam Hazley that's very interesting. Hazley's out. Moniak's in. Frank Klose tells us why. Coming up next. 4:45 on a Wednesday. Phillies made a move, and it's an interesting one. We'll get more insight on it now. Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. He has the latest up on our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. But he is now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline to kind of break it down with us as the Phillies recalled outfielder Mickey Moniak from their alternate training site today. They sent down Adam Haseley, what was described as personal reasons, Frank. Now, the interesting part about this is if you listen to what Joe Girardi said, he really gave no time frame and wasn't sure whether Haseley was coming back at all the rest of the season, right? Did you get that indication from him speaking that he wasn't real sure if Haseley would come back at all this year?
Well, he was asked, do you expect Adam Haseley back this year? And his response was, I don't know. So whatever it is, it sounds serious enough that they're going to let it play out. But hopefully he is okay. His family's okay. You certainly don't want to get into speculating about anything, but I certainly, an issue like this, you'd wish him the very best.
So he's on the restricted list. What does that mean for 40-man rostering, any of that stuff?
So if he's on the restricted list, then they actually can get a 40-man roster spot back. The Phillies do need to put Simone Muzziotti back on the 40-man roster at some point soon. He had some visa issues coming out of Venezuela, as did Ranger Suarez, by the way. That just sort of came out that was one of the reasons why he's so far behind. So if the Phillies add Muzziotti back, there's your 40th man, and that could be probably happening soon. If Suarez got it all cleared up, I would imagine Muzziotti should be coming back soon anyway. So that might be where the roster kind of shakes out in the interim anyway. Because if you get beyond that, if Haseley comes back, Muzziotti's back, you have to cut somebody.
Right. Obviously, yes, he is on the restricted list. The Phillies called back Mickey Moniak. Haseley left the team for personal reasons, undetermined amount of time. And they call up Mickey Moniak. So are you surprised it was Moniak over maybe Kingery or somebody else? Obviously, Herrera is somebody we talked about on Tuesday. You said you did not see Herrera, but Kingery being a right-handed bat, Moniak being a left-handed bat. I know if they plan to platoon Quinn and Moniak, essentially he takes Haseley's spots. Moniak makes more sense, but now you're back to three left-handers on your bench.
Yeah, I think they brought Moniak up to play him. I would be really surprised if he doesn't get the bigger share of starts in center field at this point. When they sent him down, they kind of indicated they wanted him getting at bats every day. They said the same thing of Kingery too. One interesting thing about Kingery is I was looking at the alternate site game that was going on today. So that the Phillies alternate site is set to take on the New York Yankees alternate site up in Moosic at the back where the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons used to play. But today's lineup featured Herrera in center field, but then Scott Kingery playing third base. I thought that was kind of interesting. So maybe they're still trying to figure out if Scott Kingery is worth being an outfielder, or they're going to try to position him to be an infielder. I just found that particularly surprising, given the center field issue that you wouldn't be seeing Kingery in the outfield. So we'll see what happens going forward at the alternate site, but seemed to me a little odd that Kingery wasn't even in the outfield. He was in the infield, and maybe that's an indication of where the Phillies think that Kingery belongs long term.
Could be, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much longer, or do they view Quinn just to say, hey, he can hit against lefties, let Moniak hit against righties? Do you just do a straight left-right platoon like that? Or do you figure that they're getting to the end of the rope with Quinn and that they view him only as a late-inning replacement, a guy who can get on and steal a base, run for somebody, something like that? Or do they still want him to get those left-hand bats against left-handers?
That's a really good question. I think right now, if you cut Roman Quinn right now and try to outright him off the roster or something like that, you're going to find somebody claims him. So I don't know that the Phillies just want to give up on an asset like that just yet. He's got the speed. He's got a decent enough arm in the outfield. And a lot of teams towards the end of the year, they traditionally, there's the Roman Quinns of the world always end up on somebody's September roster trying to steal a base and such. So I think they want to keep him around. Digging into his numbers long term, not that he's had that many opportunities, but most months of his career, he's hit around 100. And he's either had like a good month or two here or there, but I think it's fair to say that the sample size is getting big enough that you start to think about what you're going to do next with Roman Quinn. Maybe not play him. Maybe you're just going to say that this is Mickey Moniak's center field, and then we figure out what you're going to do with Quinn later, or try to get used to Quinn as an extra man on the roster and see if that's a fit. But I think you're going to get to the point soon where you've seen enough to know whether or not his bat can hang in the major leagues.
Oh, and the hard part is, Frank, I mean, I agree with you. If you release him, someone scoops him up, he's on somebody's roster. I get all that part of it. The problem is you keep him on your roster, and he essentially is taking up a spot, and I don't know that they have the luxury to have a luxury player on their team.
That's a good point. One weakness we're seeing so far is a right-handed bench bat. You might then ask the question, do you need a more established right-handed hitter on your roster? But quite frankly, you're not going to find one of those right now. You might find one towards the trade deadline, but I can understand why for now you don't want to start dumping assets that'll be hard to replace, because we're already down Adam Hazley now, right? So if you're looking at the roster, you're saying, okay, well, if you're the Phillies, you can say, well, we're down one, and then if we get rid of Quinn, then you're that much further down, and they can't go that deep, right? And so certainly how long Hazley is out could play a role in this, but or if they feel they know sooner than later, or if they get a sense of how long Hazley's out, that could impact this. But with Hazley out of the picture, that's one step down now, and I don't know if they want to just give up on Quinn at this point.
Right. Torres is playing short tonight. He's only played one game all year, but they got a problem defensively. DD, McCutchen. I mean, Bohm's playing short, left, and third, and he's not great either. But, I mean, those guys got no range at all. Torres, you almost have to keep him on the roster probably because he's a better defender than DD at this point.
Well, yeah. There was a report that came out recently. I apologize. I forget who reported it, but it said that the Phillies were actually more into Andrelton Simmons than they were Didi Gregorius, and after they lost out on Simmons, they pivoted back to Gregorius. So the reason why they did that was a concern over defense. Not that they think Gregorius is bad, but they thought he was stronger. So this is probably a night off for
Right.
Didi, playing both games yesterday.
But I agree with that. I'm just saying, defensively, I mean, at some point, if he's missing, there's some routine plays that he's struggling on, right?
Yeah, and I will say maybe that's why Kingery's playing some third base down at the alternate site. Maybe the Phillies want to shift some things around now and then. Maybe Bohm playing some first.
I'll tell you, Frank, Kingery not being able to help them really hurts them, because he could play second, short, third, center. You could platoon him and Moniak in center field. He could play against the lefties, Moniak against the righties. He can then, if you wanted him in the lineup, you could play him against right-handed pitchers, let Moniak play center. He gives somebody a day off at second, short, and third. The fact that he has struggled so much at the plate has really, I think, put a wrench in their plans.
Yeah, I would agree. And if you look at the Phillies offense, I mean, how many of the players on the Phillies are younger, homegrown players that aren't costing them a lot of money? They have a lot of money at almost every position, except for third base, Alec Bohm. Right now, center field's not costing them a lot, but McCutchen, Harper, Segura, Gregorius, Real Muto. I mean, they have a lot of money on position players, and teams that tend to get over the hump have some younger, homegrown guys in addition to some vets. Phillies are very veteran heavy, and I think that they really would have benefited if they could have had Scott Kingery starting every day. Maybe they don't re-sign Didi. Maybe that means that money goes somewhere else that could help them. So yeah, having Kingery get it is going to be important. Now, everything I keep hearing is that he looks good at the alternate site, but not a lot of real game action. I mean, they're getting going on this schedule right now. Like I said, they're playing today up in Music. I don't know if that's enough to tell you if he's back or not. But we'll have to see. I mean, they need something from Scott Kingery, and I really think they need more than just a bench bat too, because they're set to pay him a lot of money.
Yep. Nola last night. What'd you think?
I saw somebody say on Twitter, it's almost like when Nola needs a big game win, he doesn't come through. You think about the last few Septembers. Second game of a doubleheader. you went into that game thinking, okay, you need Nola to go deep in this one and save the bullpen because you, I mean, there's going to be as I was telling you on Tuesday, there's going to be effects into Saturday now because you got to figure out who the sixth starter is, and then if it's Velasquez and your bullpen is short, he did not come up big yesterday. Now some have suggested he's got a little bit of a dead arm ish. You know, his velocity was down. And a lot of that the dead arm phase is something that happens a lot for people early in the year.
Well, I know a lot of people are questioning him. I saw ESPN.com, though, had him as the 5th best ace in baseball. I was a little surprised by that article. We'll have more Phillies. They got the Mets. Frank Klose, at Frank Klose with the K. Frank, Klose. Follow him on Twitter for more Phillies. Mickey Moniak is up. Adam Hastley is out for personal reasons, unspecified amount of time. We'll keep our eyes on that. All right, Frank, thanks for popping on in short notice there.
Always good to chat with you.
As always, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Coming up in the next hour, we'll talk a little NFL. Geoff Kerr from CBS Sports going to talk a little draft with us here on the Sports Bash. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. You can download the app in the App Store, wherever you download your apps, whether it be iPhone, Android. Sports Bash is brought to you by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Get yours online at deere.com. This hour, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL writer. We're going to talk a little draft. We're going to look at the draft. Everything. Soup to nuts. But we got Eagles on our mind for the draft as well. If you missed football at 4, Jeff Mosher, good conversation today on that. I want to get into the Sixers and the Nets tonight. You know, the Nets kind of left us high and dry. We're expecting this big matchup tonight, and they gave us bupkis. Kevin Durant's out. No James Harden. No Blake Griffin. No LaMarcus Aldridge for the Nets tonight. So you get that. So the Sixers, should take care of business tonight. If they don't, we'll have something to say about it tomorrow. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973 on the text board. If you're watching the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you can get involved in the live chat and leave your comments on the side section below. We'll put those up on the screen. You know, one of the big things about this game tonight, we had Kevin Pelton on earlier. We asked him, Nets or the field? He went the field, which is a little surprising. Everybody's picking the Nets. And he talked about the depth in the East. It's really the 3 teams, right? Or wrong? The Nets, I think everybody understands the Nets at this point. When they're at full blast, they're going to be very difficult to keep up with scoring-wise. Heck, think about this, all right? Think about the fact that they've played about 8 games together, the Brooklyn Nets, and they're averaging 118 points per game. What do they average in the game when those guys play together? They're averaging more points than the Sixers do. And they're averaging more points than everybody else other than one team. There's only one team in the league that scores more points per game than the Nets do. Can you name them? Because this Nets team isn't at full blast yet. And they're the second highest scoring team in the league. And one team scores more than they do. The Bucks. Are we not looking at the Bucks enough? The Bucks score 119 a night. It's best in the NBA. And of the 3 teams, Philly, Brooklyn, and the Bucks, they give up 112. It's better than Brooklyn is. Their point differential is the best of the 3 teams. They're a plus 6.1. Philadelphia's plus 5.4. And Brooklyn's plus 4.7. Now, on the Western Conference side, Utah scores 117. They only give up 107. They're better defensively. But are we not looking at the Bucks enough? Kevin brought that up. You know, this is a team that has been the number 1 seed a couple of years. They've been to the Eastern Conference Finals. They had a 2-game-to-none lead on Toronto. And here they are, 3.5 games back, and no one's really all that worried about them. They've sat Giannis out a bunch. He's at the sore knee. But the Sixers and the Nets are getting all the attention. Should they be? 609-403-0973. Hit me up on the text board. You know, tonight, you're going to see a very shorthanded Brooklyn team. And the one question we continue to wonder in this particular game is who is defending Joel Embiid? I think tonight Joel Embiid needs to really send a message that I don't care that Durant's not here. I don't care that Harden's not here. Those guys aren't defending me. You're going to get Nick Claxton, I would imagine, is going to get a bulk of the minutes trying to defend Joel Embiid tonight. I wouldn't be surprised. I would like to see what the DraftKings points are for Embiid tonight. What's the over-under for points for Joel Embiid tonight? Because I would imagine this is the kind of game that you're going to get a pissed off Joel Embiid because those guys sat out. He was looking forward to this game, and you're getting a half-assed Brooklyn team. So he's going to say, I don't care that those guys are out. You can't stop me. Durant's not defending me. Harden's not defending me. So I don't care that those two guys aren't in play. And it's a valid point. Kevin Durant ain't defending Joel Embiid. You see what Joel Embiid would do to Kevin Durant? He'd fold him up like a sweater. You know, like at the end of the season when you fold that sweater up and then you put it at the top of your closet? Kevin Durant wouldn't have a shot to defend Joel Embiid. Kevin Durant would have the best seats in the whole building. Embiid would just back his ass down and he'd be flopping all over the place. Kevin Durant ain't defending Joel Embiid. That's one. We know James Harden's not defending. So the guys that are available tonight, yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge might try. Operative word, try. He might try to defend Joel Embiid. So the one thing that I find interesting tonight, and I'm looking at the player props tonight, the Embiid is over under 30.5. I like the over. I mean, I could see Joel Embiid going for 38. How the hell are they going to stop him? And if they do stop him, the Sixers and Joel Embiid should be pissed. They should be. They've got Tobias over under 18.5, Ben Simmons 13.5. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if Ben Simmons gives you a decent game tonight offensively. He's been kind of a little chirpy recently, saying they don't defend. They don't, they only have one ball. He said that he scored 42 the other night, right? He said, well, you guys say that Rudy Gobert is the defensive player of the year. I scored 42 on him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ben goes over 13 points, 13.5 tonight. But to me, the big statement that could happen in this game is Joel Embiid. Okay, Brooklyn, you don't want to play anybody? Fine. No worries. Because those guys, when they return, they're not helping you. Not against me. So I would like to see not only for the Sixers to win the game tonight, but to dominate the game tonight through Joel Embiid. That to me is the only statement that the Sixers can really make in this game tonight is that beating the Nets, not impressive. Not this version of the Nets. Losing to the Nets, disastrous. Close game against the Nets, don't care. Get a win. Don't care if it's scrappy, ugly. But to me, the message is, if I'm Steve Nash and I watch this game tonight and I see Embiid just rip roaring through me, dunking, fade away, spin off, same as the other night. How do you stop him? And Steve Nash looks up and down his bench and says, everybody I got here, they're going to have to defend Joel Embiid in a playoff series. Anybody I have coming back, you're going to tell me Blake Griffin is going to try to defend Joel Embiid? Come on. It's laughable. You're going to tell me Kevin Durant is going to try to defend Joel Embiid? Come on. The guys that are going to try to defend Joel Embiid, they're on this roster, and they're playing tonight. Hey, best case scenario for the Nets is, hey, DeAndre Jordan, Nick Claxton, you want the night off too? Because we've already conceded. We might as well not embarrass ourselves. The most embarrassing thing would be if the Sixers lose this game, period, point blank. But the message they can send to the Nets is, hey, you didn't want to play your guys against us? Fine. But the guys you did play, they're the guys who are going to be defending Joel Embiid in a playoff series. How about that? Here's a nice big spoonful of 7'2", 280 pounds down in the low block. Have fun with me. Because I don't see a way. The one way I think Brooklyn beats Philadelphia is if they just simply shoot the lights out, outscore them, and it's a 128, 121 type of game. Not tonight. I'm talking about in a series. If Brooklyn's going to beat Philly in a series, it's going to be a high-scoring series that the Sixers don't have a good shooting night, can't keep up. Joel Embiid scores 40, and they just don't have enough secondary offense. Curry's not hitting shots. Green's not hitting shots. Tobias kind of craps out. Ben obviously isn't aggressive. There's a lot of things that need to go wrong in that situation, by the way. Seth Curry, a pretty good shooter, has an off night. Danny Green's turned into a pretty important player on this team. Believe it or not. Right? Danny Green has turned into a pretty important player on this team. Danny Green is hitting threes at 41%. So now you have Curry at 41%, Green at 41%, Tobias Harris at 40%, Joel Embiid at 38%. 38% to me in the NBA is where, okay, 38%, 40%, you're really cranking them. 38%, you're above average. And by the way, Korkmaz is 37. So they got Korkmaz at 37, Green at 41, Curry at 41, Harris at 40. They got three guys who play big minutes over 40%. You got three guys at 40%. It's pretty good. But we all know the three of them could be off at the same time, and that would be disastrous. We all know that if Joel Embiid scores 40 and you're looking around and Tobias doesn't have a big night and the other two aren't shooting well, you got problems. That's a lot of things that need to happen. Tom in the Villas checking in on the text board says, just my opinion. I think there are too many egos on that Nets team. They're going to go to kick into overdrive in the playoffs. Three superstars trying to take over at the same time might hurt more than to help the Nets. Tough to say, man. LeBron, D. Wade, and Bosh, they made it work. We've seen other threesomes make it work. This one's a little different that these are three offensive-minded guys as opposed to the Heat team where Bosh wasn't an offensive-first guy. I mean, even LeBron is a pass-first offensive guy. Yes, he scores, but he's a facilitator. He's a scorer. He does it all. And D. Wade. These three guys want the ball and they want to score. That's the difference there. But I think you can make an argument that James Harden has acquiesced a little bit. No? Harden has definitely changed his game a little bit. Kyrie, I haven't seen enough of him this year, man. He is in, he's out, he's in, he's out, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere, but on the court, I don't know what to think. Kyrie used to be such a fun player to watch. Now, and the funny part is, of the three, he's played the most games. And by the way, he scored 27 a night, Kyrie. I mean, he's not a stiff by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't know that he can be trusted with these other two guys. It's different when you got LeBron James putting him in his place. Is Kevin Durant that kind of guy? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, he's been the MVP of the finals. But Kevin Durant just seems like a very laid-back kind of, I think he's a different type of superstar. Durant's having by the way, if Durant played the full year this year, if he didn't get hurt, and darn it that he did, because I bought a ticket earlier in the year that I wanted the prop swap at Durant MVP. He's only played 22 games, though. He screwed me. But Durant might be the MVP of the league numerically. 28 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 44% from 3. I mean, 87% from the line. Are you kidding me? Durant's having a monster year. The problem is he only played 22 games. And if you're the Nets writing that check to Kevin Durant, you got screwed last year. He didn't play at all. And now this year he's playing 22 games. Now, if he wins you a title and he's the MVP of the finals, maybe. But if you get bounced and he's played 22 games, let's say he plays 30 games at the end of the day. Maybe he plays 33 games. 33 games? What you're paying Durant? What's your ROI there? It better be championship. Kyrie, by the way, is averaging 27 points a game, which is more than Harden. He's 39% from 3. And he's played the most games of the 3, which is odd to even say. Like, I feel like Kyrie's out almost every other night, which he is. He's only played 38. I mean, they've played, 55 games, 54, 55 games. He's missed almost 20 games, 15 games. And then Harden is averaging 25, and he's shooting 36 from 3. Now, you talk about three-point percentage. Joe Harris is 48. But we know playoff time, Harris is a different player. The Sixers will will eliminate him. And other than that, Jeff Green shoots it a little bit. He doesn't, play all that much. Blake Griffin shooting 38% from 3, but God, you got to count on Blake Griffin. How does Blake Griffin even get a touch in that offense? Shamet shoots it a little bit, but in the playoffs, that's a different game. In the playoffs, it's Durant, Irving, and it's Harden, those 3. I'll tell you who they miss. They gave up LeVert. They missed LeVert. They might miss LeVert and Jared Allen. Well, in the Sixers series, they'll miss Allen big time. I just don't see where tonight, to me, that's what makes tonight so interesting. The game lost a little luster, definitely. But what makes tonight so interesting to me is what Brooklyn does with Joel Embiid. That, to me, is the night. If I'm Doc Rivers, Joel, go for 45. Just absolutely demoralize them in the post. Because that's the only thing that you can really accomplish from this game tonight. Everything else has been sucked away by Brooklyn. Now, Doc Rivers is talking now and said, we really haven't talked about the number 1 seed. We just talked about winning games. I don't think I've ever brought it up at all. It would be really nice to have. A little mixed messaging there. His players have talked about the number 1 seed. It's just like him the other night. That he basically was like, I don't even know who's on our schedule yet. That's a lie. It's like the Jerry Springer. You said you didn't know who was on your schedule. That was a lie. DNA test said that was a lie. You knew who was on your schedule. No doubt. You knew who was on your schedule. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. At Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Joe Show, watching on YouTube. Personally, I think the most important game is against the Bucks. Sixers can easily move into third place in the standings. Luckily, the Bucks haven't been doing well the past 10. Don't count them out. Bucks are 3.5 back. The Sixers are playing the Bucks twice next week. So, yeah, you don't want to be the 3 seed. Hey, if the Sixers enter the playoffs and they're not the 1, they're not making it. They need to be the number 1 seed. Of all the teams, the Sixers need to be the number 1 seed. Facts. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, Jeff Kerr going to talk a little NFL draft. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL writer. On the other side, you can continue your Sixers conversation in the chat. I will continue to read your text. 609-403-0973. Busy day. Holy moly, we're on the 5 o'clock hour already. Can you believe it? And I got Sports Bash Cash. Chance to win $1,000. Yeah, it's coming up. Don't go away. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
It's
All right, 525 on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN on a Wednesday evening. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL, set to join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline at Geoff Kerr CBS for his great insight on the NFL and the NFL draft and all things NFL. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. We'll be talking to Geoff more throughout this offseason, getting ready for the draft, post-draft, Eagles, and all, as he joins us now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Geoff Kerr here on the Sports Bash. Welcome back, Geoff. How you doing, man?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing pretty good. Yourself?
We're good, man. We're getting closer to the NFL draft. 2 weeks from tomorrow, and I want to get into some of the storylines. So let's pick your brain on this a bit. Lawrence 1, Wilson 2, Jones 3?
I'm not buying it. I think that's a smokescreen. I think the 49ers are taking Justin Fields at 3, and that's it. The one picture I saw today of Kyle Shanahan and Justin Fields kind of smirking at each other, I would love to be fly on that wall for that conversation, be like, can you actually believe we're taking Matt Jones 3, or do you believe we're taking Trey Lance 3? No, Justin Fields or Trey Lance at 3 for the 49ers, but I think it's truly going to be Justin Fields. I think the 49ers are passing out that smoke screen to a lot of these teams that, hey, we're going to take Mac Jones, or maybe these teams kind of trade up for a guy that's not going to be there. Personally, I think Justin Fields is the second best quarterback in this draft, not the third best, and I think it's a home run for the 49ers at 3.
All right, so you think there might be a curve at 3, but a quarterback taken. So the first curve might come at 4. So what's more possible? Atlanta makes the pick, or Atlanta gets out of there?
Well, here's the thing with Atlanta. I think they're in the driver's seat no matter what at 4. Because really, they could take Kyle Pitts and just say, forget about it. We're going to take our guy. He's there, and that's it. But the Falcons could legitimately trade down a couple spots, maybe with the Carolina Panthers, maybe with the Denver Broncos, and still have an opportunity to get a guy like Kyle Pitts. But if you're Atlanta, you might want to take a quarterback yourself. Maybe you take Mac Jones. Maybe you take Trey Lance. Or Trey Lance would be perfect for them, too, because that's a guy they can develop for a year or two. Because Matt Ryan's still a really good quarterback. He's not going anywhere. He's led the NFL in passing yards over the last 3 years. So it's not like Matt Ryan stinks or anything, but you do have to think about your future here. And I'm sure Atlanta knows that, but you can also think about your future and stockpile draft picks. So I think if push comes to shove, Atlanta's going to get an offer they can't refuse and trade down. But if not, I think they're the team that just gets the best player in the draft, bar none, Kyle Pitts at number 4.
All right. Bengals are interesting because they usually screw this up. If I'm the Bengals, I'm taking Penei Sewell. I got to protect my asset from last year. But Jamar Chase, Burrow, they played together. So jump inside the Bengals war room for us.
I'll tell you what, the Bengals are going to have a decision to make if Kyle Pitts is past 4, because if you take Kyle Pitts at 5, even though you need Penei Sewell or an offensive lineman, it's hard to pass on a tight end there. And they really don't have a lot of strength at that position. If you can get a generational tight end to pair with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and a lot of those wide receivers, I think you take that opportunity. But it's not the worst thing in the world that the Bengals do chase Jamar Chase. I mean, yeah, A.J. Green has been, he's gone now, but he wasn't exactly good last year, but that's still a big part of your offense you're missing here. He was a veteran presence for that wide receiver room. So if I'm the Bengals, I take the safe pick, the smart pick, Penei Sewell. You protect Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has already torn his ACL because you're already throwing the ball, 40 times a game with him? I mean, Joe Burrow almost broke Drew Bledsoe's NFL record for pass attempts in the game last year, and that was only his second or third career game. You have to protect him. If you're going to throw the ball like that, protect Joe Burrow. Go get the offensive lineman, but I wouldn't be shocked if they took Kyle Pitts if he was there at 5, and I definitely wouldn't be shocked if they took Jamar Chase there because, again, that's that quarterback-wide receiver combo. The Bengals can always bangle it up, but I would draft the offensive lineman.
Me too. I agree. 6 would be Miami, and, of course, Miami's moved all over the place, so I guess there's a chance that they could do something else here. But they got Mike Gesicki, nice athletic tight end. I like him, young guy. But if Pitts is there at 6, do they go and add the double tight end? Is Chase in play here? What's your read on Miami?
I think Miami has had their eyes on Jamar Chase the entire time. I think, personally to me, Kyle Pitts is very nice. And, they could have drafted him at number 3, but it was smart for the Dolphins to trade back and then find a trade partner with the Eagles to trade back up again. So now you still might get the guy you always wanted at number 6. And to me, if I'm Miami, I would take Jamar Chase. You pair him with Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and you got a dominant wide receiver core for Tua Tagovailoa. And look, you still have Mike Gesicki there. It's not like he's terrible. And Durham Smythe, he's a very good blocking tight end. I know Brian Flores likes to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. You can't do much worse than those 2 there. You got one of the better receiving tight ends in football, one of the better blocking tight ends in football. You have a solid offensive line, but also you need another first-round pick there anyway at number 18. So you can address that offensive line later. Go get the best player on the board, get Jamar Chase, and allow this quarterback who I was on record of saying last year, I thought Tua had the potential to be the best out of 3 between Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and him. And I still think that's a possibility. Obviously, my opinion has changed a lot because I was a big fan of Justin Herbert last year too. But I would go Jamar Chase and just load up for him at wide receiver.
All right, that would be an interesting spot there. Detroit, they're in the Bengals realm where, they usually mess this up. They're at 7, but I feel like, by the way, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL, is with us breaking down draft. I feel like the Lions have kind of been the one team, like, no one's talking about trading up, trading out. Are they going to take a quarterback? No, they just got Goff. So they're a tough one to get a read on here.
This is the team. I did the perfect draft plan for the Lions today for CBS. And the one thing I said they should do, trade down from number 7 and get more picks. They only have 6 picks in this draft. And there are going to be teams hungry to move up in that number 7 spot, especially if Trey Lance or Max Jones are still on the board. And you can add a couple picks. Say the New England Patriots want to trade with the Detroit Lions to go up from 15 to 7. Say the Chicago Bears want to go up from 20 to 7, or Washington wants to go from 19 to 7. Then you could get more picks. And look, this is the problem with Detroit here. Rashad Perriman and Tyrell Williams are nice 1-year deals. They're not the answer at wide receiver. Like, they're good for a year, but you need assets. And yeah, Jamar Chase would be very, very enticing if he would fall to number 7. But I have the Dolphins taking Chase. Do you go Devonta Smith? Do you go Jalen Waddle? No, I think you trade down and you get one of the second tier of wide receivers, if you want to call them a second tier, the Tonys of the world, the Terrence Marshalls, I don't think that's a bad idea. And I think the Lions need help on the offensive line, especially since I'm hearing they want to move Halapaa Lute Vaitai, the guard. So that leaves a big hole at right tackle. They could go offensive line here. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to trade down, stockpile more picks. So I don't know who they would trade for number 7. Personally, I think the Denver Broncos would be perfect to move up from 9 to 7, but I think Detroit trades down.
All right, there you go there. 8's interesting. Carolina could trade. They got Darnold. They can move up. They can get out. People could call them. They are another very interesting team. They just got Darnold. Do they need an offensive lineman to protect them? Do they need a weapon for him to connect with? Carolina, I find to be an interesting team as well.
This is a team where if one of those quarterbacks are on the board, they're going to have a decision to make because they do have a quarterback in Sam Darnold, but they had a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater last year too, and they only committed to him for 1 year, and now they want to get rid of him. So I think they're going to kind of sit at number 8, see how the board plays out. If there's a quarterback at 8 and a team wants to trade up, I think they trade down and get their offensive lineman later, but they could always get their offensive lineman at 8, especially if Cincinnati decides to pass on Penei Sewell. I think it's a perfect fit for them. I think they need to do whatever they can to make sure Sam Darnold is protected or he's going to have the same fate as he did in New York. I think Carolina stays there and just waits to see what the draft board plays out.
All right, let's go to Denver, another team that's not a lot of buzz. They're going to trade in, trade out, stay there. Defense, offense, they need weapons. They need a quarterback. They like defense out there. They got a defensive-minded coach. So, Denver Broncos, offense, defense, or out?
This is the tough one for me. I think if there's a quarterback there, they take a quarterback no matter what. If there isn't one, Micah Parsons would be very intriguing for that defense. I'm not saying they're going to take him, but he'll be on the board at 9. I'm pretty sure the Broncos know that. And again, I think this is where they can get a quarterback at number 9. I think it'll be the last one available. Maybe it will be Mac Jones. I still think the Mac Jones at 3 is a smoke screen. I don't think he'll go that high. I think he'll go high, but I think it's maybe as high as number 9 or that's where I think the last quarterback will be taken. So I think Denver will be in position to get a quarterback. I think they get their quarterback as competition for Drew Lock. They don't trade for Teddy Bridgewater. They just wait and see how the draft board plays out, and they get their quarterback.
All right, that would be interesting if they ended up taking a quarterback because that means another quarterback's off the board, which means there's more in play at 10 for Dallas. Now, Dallas is interesting because New England's back there. I guess that would mean there's only one quarterback potentially left on the board. So does Dallas say, you know what? We'll move back and see what falls to us at 15. Do they stay there, take a defensive player? Do they get greedy and get themselves a wideout?
So this is what I think. I think all 5 quarterbacks could be gone by 9. I think Denver gets the last one. So that's where I think the whole trade scenario or trade frenzy comes in. So I'm looking at Dallas as, okay, Patrick Surtain's on the board. You need a cornerback. You definitely need a boundary cornerback. You really got to fix up that defense. You don't need Kyle Pitts. You don't need more offense. They could go offensive line here, but I think with Patrick Surtain on that board, or heck, even Micah Parsons on that board, I think you go defense. I think you run to the podium and select one of those two, but I think they get Patrick Surtain.
All right. That would be obviously a little bit of blow at 12 to Philly. I mean, Surtain would probably be high on their best player available board to who they think would be there. But you got the Giants sitting right there. Giants can go in a variety of directions, Geoff. You got wide receivers still. You've got offensive line. How about a edge rusher or a linebacker type? We haven't seen one of those off the board yet. So handicap the Giants.
So if you're the Eagles here, and I'm already thinking Eagles, it doesn't matter who the Giants take. They take Michael Parsons, brilliant. They take an offensive lineman, Rashad Slater, Christian Darrisaw, brilliant. You take Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle, brilliant. You're still going to get one of those players. So if I'm looking at the Giants, I don't think they need a receiver as bad as they think they need a receiver. I think what the Giants do is they just take the best player available, and I think this guy is going to be a stud in their defense. I think he'd be a stud in the Eagles' defense too, and that's Michael Parsons. And I just think they take him at 11. He's there. You put him in Patrick Graham's defense. He can go after the quarterback. He can cover. He's going to be a force for years to come. I think the Giants build their team off a strong defense, and I think Michael Parsons leads that. You take him at 11.
Interesting. That leaves you Philly 12, and you just mentioned. So breaking down what we just did, if that's what happens and it gets to 12 and what plays out happens, do you look back and say the Eagles, not that you're saying they made a bad deal, but do you say, man, this really played out well for them?
I think this really played out well for them. I think the Eagles knew what they were getting. Oh, by the way, you're going to get an extra first-round pick for a guy you would have probably picked at 6 anyway. The decision is, can Howie Roseman screw this up? Does he take the one Alabama wide receiver or the other Alabama wide receiver, Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle? Now, this scares me a lot with Howie Roseman. Did you know, Mike, 96 Alabama players have been taken since Saban became coach in 2007, and the Eagles are the only team to never take one? I'm not even counting Jalen Hurts on this because, he was Oklahoma. So the Cowboys only took 2. The Eagles only took 0. That scares me, but you don't pass on Devonta Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner. You don't pass on Jalen Waddle, who probably would have been the Heisman Trophy winner if he didn't get hurt. I think Waddle is the more explosive player. I think he's the guy with the Tyreek Hill potential, the guy Jalen Hurts and this offense desperately needs. You pair with Jalen Reagor, but man, you can't go wrong with Devonta Smith here. Perfect possession receiver, excellent route runner, makes defenders miss. You can use him in so many ways. I think no matter who Nick Sirianni takes here, they win. No matter who Howie Roseman takes here, they win. It's just the matter of which, it's a matter of which good player is going to be better. And I don't care who they take at this point. I would personally take Jalen Waddle if he's there at 12 and let Devonta Smith slip, but you can't get upset they take Devonta Smith either. I think both are perfect for what the Eagles are trying to do.
Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, NFL. There we go. We went from 1 to 12. We'll do more leading into the draft, more NFL. Geoff will be with us more throughout this draft process and into the mini camps and the training camps, if they have those. We'll have plenty more here on the Eagles, on the NFL. So many names that we didn't mention, too, that would be in play. J.C. Horn, Caleb Farley, Kwity Paye, Vera Tucker. I guess you could go to the back end now, like Elijah Moore. We talked a little bit about that second group of wide receivers. Do the Eagles think about moving back in? Is there a player that starts to fall in the 20s that the Eagles move back in for?
I think Terrence Marshall could be one, but I'm already assuming they drafted the wide receiver. So what about Greg Newsome, the cornerback?
Yep.
I think that'd be a guy the Eagles could trade up for. Maybe even, I don't even think this is a reach. You would draft Asante Samuel at the end of the first round. If he's there, I think he's a guy. To me, Asante Samuel Jr., he's better in the slot, but a lot of cornerbacks play a slot these days. I still think he needs a lot of work as a boundary corner. But if Greg Newsome's there, I think you trade up, and I think you get him, no matter what. You got your starting cornerback there to pair with Darius Slay for the next couple seasons. I think that's the guy you trade back in the 20s for. If a cornerback falls to the Eagles at 12, say they draft J.C. Horn, which could be Howie Roseman's strategy here. You draft a guy like J.C. Horn, who I think is going to be excellent in this league. You draft him, you're going to have your pickings of trading back in the first round for Terrence Marshall, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. That's an embarrassment of riches for them. It just matters of which one do you want or which one do you think is going to be the best fit for you. This is why I went wide receiver at 12, because I think it's just hard to screw it up at 12 compared to the 20s, as the Eagles did over the last year. Nothing against Jalen Reagor. I think Jalen Reagor is still going to be a really good player in this league, but I always look back on it, especially when I watch Brandon Ayuk play or Justin Jefferson. I'm like, man, the Eagles could have had them.
T. Higgins, another guy, second round, ended up being the second best guy out there. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL. You can follow him at Geoff Kerr, CBS, and he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. I could talk more draft for another hour, but unfortunately, I got to go, man.
No problem, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Geoff Kerr, take care. He, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Geoff, excellent on the draft. Great NFL. We'll do a lot more with Geoff coming up this season, off season. But when we come back, we had great guests today. Paul Hudrick, Jeff Mosher, Kevin Pelton, and that guy right there, Geoff Kerr, plus Frank Klose. Sound of the day. It's coming up next. And don't forget, download the free mobile app. You can personalize your app alerts. Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, Eagles, high school sports, or get them all. Find out when the big stories are posted at 973ESPN.com. Download the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Watch the Sports Bash live each and every day on your phone, tablet, laptop, wherever you're watching the Sports Bash today. Let us know. in the chat. Let us know where you're watching the show. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter is where you can see it. All right, Sports Bash is coming back with the sound of the day. It's coming up next. All right, here we go. Sound of the day. Our guests today were excellent, as always. I feel like second to none when it comes to guests on the Sports Bash, and Game Night does a great job with the guests as well. When you're listening to 97.3, you're getting great insight from our guests. So Frank Klose came in an emergency situation. No, not really. I just said, hey, Frank, there was a move with the Phillies that was pretty important. Let's break it down. He said, sure. He said this.
I think they brought Moniak up to play him. I would be really surprised if he doesn't get the bigger share of starts in center field at this point. You know, when they sent him down, they kind of indicated they wanted him getting at bats every day.
See Moniak playing every day. And does that last a while?
I think it's going to last as long as he lets them make it last. I think that, like Frank said, this is his opportunity. You know, he made the comment at one point when he talked to you, Mike, that this is Moniak center field to further notice.
A little surprising. I mean, if they play him out there every day and he starts to struggle, then what, I guess?
Then maybe you go all up a double.
Possibility. I feel like if I ask you who's starting center field after the All-Star break?
Not currently on the roster, is what I guess.
Well, would that be Odubel?
No, I mean, not even in the organization.
Oh, okay. That's a different guy.
Yeah. I think there's a possibility the Phillies might get to like the end of June. And if Hazley is still gone and Moniak didn't work out and Odubel's not what they really wanted, they might just go make a trade at this point.
By the way, Paul Hudrick, who's at the game tonight, sent me a picture. The Sixers are giving out all-day IPAs to the media tonight. A case. 12-pack, I mean.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have gone.
Should tell Hudrick he owes you an IPA.
Paul Hudrick, does the game matter tonight?
There's still something at stake here, too. The season series. If the Sixers win tonight, they get the season series over Brooklyn. And if it winds up being a tie after 72 games, the Sixers would get the number 1 seed. So this game does matter. It's not like it doesn't matter. So, I mean, let's just say that both teams decide for the rest of the season, we're going to coast into the postseason. This game still matters for that number 1 seed.
Does it?
Yes, it does. Listen, I understand the sentiment that all that matters is if you win in the postseason. A lot of the teams that get the number 1 seed in recent years, they haven't won. But a lot of those years, it was because LeBron was in the Eastern Conference and teams like the Hawks and the Raptors had no chance against LeBron. So some of that history is a little tainted.
Game really lost its luster for me, man. The one thing I can take for this game is I want to see Joel. I just put my bet in. Joel Embiid over 30.5.
Okay.
I want to see that. I want to see him just kick ass and take names.
I mean, he's certainly capable of it. The question is, will he? Because there feels like, now this is more so past, not this year, but there were games in the past where you felt like Embiid was going to go out there and dominate, and he kind of just loudly gagged his way through it. I'm
not this one.
Well, I'm hoping that this tonight proves that he is not that Embiid anymore.
What if they lose tonight?
They just have to win. If they lose.
Modern technology is a loser right now.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try this again.
It was working.
What if they lose tonight?
They just have to win. If they lose, that would be a bad sign. But if they win, a win is a win. Doesn't matter. And to me, it's just this stretch, like we talked about before, this 7-game stretch that was looking extremely daunting. You already blew out the Mavericks. If now this Nets game isn't nearly what it was. So now all of a sudden that stretch doesn't seem quite as arduous as it maybe seems from the outset.
So he says Sixers have to win tonight. Doesn't matter how. Agree?
I agree 100%. If you lose this game, this is worse than the Pelicans loss. And I was fuming after the Pelicans loss to the point where I just got off social media. At that point, there's nothing I could have said on social media that would have rectified it.
I don't know that there's anything that bothers me enough in life, period, that makes me just – it's like the people who say, I'll never buy a product from this place again, or –
well, that's just extreme. I'm not talking about that. I mean,
I'm just saying, like, nothing bothers me enough for what any other human being does to move me to change my life.
A lot of things move me, Mike. I'm a passionate individual.
I gotcha. I mean, I'm passionate about what I'm passionate about, but I don't care what you're passionate about. It's not going to change the way I like. There's people, I'm not going to ever wear this again, or I'll never buy that
But to
again.
me, that's an extremist. I'm talking about like when I see somebody doing something, I know they can do better. It's frustrating to me.
Oh, frustrating. Like Ben Simmons frustrated me until I've changed my outlook for him. If I had the same outlook, I would continue to be frustrated. But I have changed my outlook for him. I've come to terms with he's not what I wanted him to be.
I understand that, but when I saw them lose to the Pelicans, I was frustrated how the game went down.
Friday night, and then
I was frustrated last night when the Flyers got kicked in the face and didn't do anything.
That didn't bother me.
This Flyers team's a joke.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm been off the Flyers. I'm done. So any effort or lack thereof they put out, I'm not even tuning in for anymore. Seriously, what am I wasting my time for them for? I get those 3 hours a night to spend any way I want. I'm not spending it with them. Why choose to spend it with someone who's going to piss you off?
Now you're making it to like a relationship over here.
Well, that's what it is. It's a relationship with that team. My relationship with that team is now null.
You ain't got a divorce.
Kevin Pelton, who's the best player in the East?
Who's the best player in the Eastern Conference?
That's what I asked you. Who's the best player in the East?
Wasn't the midday show having these same problems today on ESPN radio?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, something's going on.
Who's the best player in the Eastern Conference, which is a loaded question because what does best player mean? Over the course of the 82-game regular season, I think Giannis and Harden are often the most valuable players in the East. Kevin Durant certainly could establish himself as that best player come playoff time. I think before he got hurt in 2019, he would have been at that top of the group. But the way that Joel Embiid has played all season long, the kind of dominance that he's had both in the paint and with his face-up game from the mid-range, the ability to make contributions on both ends. Like if you're playing one game today, Joel Embiid is my top pick in the Eastern Conference.
Joel Embiid. So if you could pick any of the guys in the East for this playoff run, who are you picking?
I mean, if all things are equal, I mean, like everyone is healthy and there's no
they're all healthy. Pick one for this playoff run. They're all healthy. They're all playing their best. By the end of the season, they're healthy. They're playing their best. They're in their prime.
Give me Durant.
Durant.
I feel like Durant is such an amazing player. He has a track record of playing well.
He was my favorite player in basketball until he made the decision to go to the Warriors. I thought that was the weakest.
It was a weak move.
Yellowest, flimsiest.
It was a beta male move.
Spineless.
Yeah.
But I can't support him. I can't support him anymore.
It doesn't diminish his talent.
No, I still love him as a player, but he's just not a guy that I
can get
root for anymore. He was my favorite player in the league. Love Durant.
He's the worst guy on Twitter. It might be the best guy on the court.
And that matters. All right, got another Sports Bash Cash code word for you coming up right now. It's worth $1,000. So don't leave. Get the code word and enter it on our website. Game night's up next Wednesday. Dave Weinberg, Kevin McCormick, live from the center.